Who are you people?
Sean. Danny, I want you to come with me right now, okay? Show me your room.
Listen to me very carefully.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 163 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm Becca and as always joined by my fellow co-host Chris and Dave and special guest Charlie of Movie Drone. How are you all?
Good evening, folks.
Hello.
I'm feeling happy.
How happy?
I don't know.
This is good padding if the episode's not very long. Just let this rough right the way through that. I wanted to get to this bit. There you go. Right. Yeah.
I mean, I did always feel this, like, Terminator 2 Judgment Day did, like, miss, like, an element of Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of hitting a jukebox to get it to working again.
Absolutely. He could have done that in the biker bar, couldn't he?
Yeah,
he could have
easily.
done it, but no, he didn't.
That came from a silly joke the other day because we were arguing is the wrong word. We were talking to somebody online about the different cuts of this film, which we'll get into in a minute, because they were fairly sure a scene is in the director's cut that I don't think is. I think it's a deleted scene. And in the nicest possible way, because they were incredibly polite, they wouldn't have it to be. They were like, no, it's definitely in there. It's like, well, fair enough. And then we were arguing about what is in the director's cut, and it got into a silly fight of Flancy about the film finishing on the Happy Days theme. So that's what that's about. To be fair, that would most suit Terminator 3. When all the bombs are going off, they really could have the Happy Days theme playing then. Well, there you go.
We could just do alternate endings of movies that just end on like a really sad note, but actually end on the Happy Days theme tune.
Yeah, Requiem for a Dream, something like that.
Yes, the 80s Raymond Briggs apocalyptic movie about nuclear war that can end on the Happy Days theme.
Or the snowman, he comes out and sees it melted.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So yeah, we were arguing about different cuts of this film. We will go through it. For my part, I actually watched the director's cut because it's what I had.
10 hours later, here you are.
So I am trying not. I have to remember what's not in the actual film before I claimed it happened. As with, I think, all director's cuts from James Cameron, adding stuff back in adds really interesting stuff and a little bit of sort of weight to some things. But it then gets baggy and you don't have a perfect cut of the film. So, for example, in the main theatrical cut of the film, there's a dream sequence where Sarah goes out and sees the end of the world. She's watching a younger version of herself with a toddler, John Connor. And when the bombs go off. Well, in the director's cut, you effectively see two of those scenes because she follows Kyle Reese out the door and sees it earlier in the film. So it's a little bit like Aliens that way. I do feel I saw a very imperfect cut of the film, but I did see some interesting scenes that some of them I kind of wish were there. Having said that, one of my favourites isn't even the director's cut. It's in a deleted scene, but we'll get to that.
I think The Abyss is the only one of those films where the director's cut is the superior cut.
I've actually only seen the theatrical cut of that, and I only saw it a couple of years ago. I was really late getting to The Abyss. I enjoyed it, though.
The legendary film.
Yeah, I just know with Aliens, it adds a little bit of weight around her daughter. I think that Gatling gun is only in the director's cut and all the rest of it. But what you're left with is something that's just too long.
Yeah, it drags.
Yeah, it drags, and it's the same with this film. The director's cut I saw was like 2 hours 33, which in itself a meaningless figure. In that films have been that long and been fine, but it's too long for this film, particularly when you think how long the Terminator is. And I think that's going to speak to some of my flaws with the film as we go through it anyway. So thinking about it, am I the only one who saw this on first release theatrically?
I saw it theatrically as well.
Oh, you'd have been way too young.
I saw it theatrically when it was released a few months ago. Re-released.
I was underage when I saw it. Yeah.
So was I, but only by about 2 months. I was sat at home on a Saturday morning with the TV on, and it went to like commercials, and they had the TV spot where the T-1000 sort of headbutts his way into the helicopter, pours in and reforms. And I literally was at the next screening because we'd never seen anything like that. I literally just immediately, I imagine back then, picked up like a newspaper or something and went, right, there's a screening in like an hour and a half or whatever. And I was at that. Yeah, I was at it. And then I went to see a friend in the Isle of Man. And he hadn't seen it, so I did see it twice theatrically on first release. But yeah, I was 2 months too young, Chris. Not as bad as you with Batman.
Was that your first Terminator experience, or had you ever seen the first one before that?
Yeah, I'd seen the first one on what we've I think divined last week was an edited version on Movie Drone. Yeah. I think we established that was June 1990. But I have a feeling I either got myself a copy of it or I recorded it. I can't remember which. I probably recorded it because it was a well-known film. So I'd seen the Terminator at least 3 or 4 times before I went to see this. It was the big reveal about the T-800 being the good guy in this, quote unquote, because that's a bit of a philosophical statement in itself. That was well rumoured around the place. I think that was kind of known before people went in, so it wasn't the biggest of big shocks. And it did, even at that age, slightly concern me because it seemed even then like pandering to a star. And Arnie was fucking massive at that time. And I mean in star, not not muscles. Because Total Recall had been the previous year, Running Man a year or two before that. Total Recall, I think at the time, may have been the most expensive film ever made, which was beaten by this. So it did concern me what we were going to get. But I mean, I was young enough as well that when I saw that little TV spot, I was like, I've not seen anything like this before. I was still at an age I could be wowed by an effect.
Yeah, so there's also probably like a little bit of element of, because of Arnold's star quality, that would it be wise to put him as a villain? I mean, it probably still would have worked, but again, you needed a bit of game-changing element to it. Plus, also, selling Arnie as a hero sells a bit better probably then than it did back with the original.
Yeah, and I've not heard anything that says he demanded that. So I don't know, but it's the sort of thing somebody in his position might demand. This time I ought to be the hero. And that's all I really knew about it. The film was enormous on release. It might have been the highest grossing film of that year. If not, it was very close. I think it took about what did it take? I can look at it now, 524 million. And actually, I knew that figure, so that has stuck in my head. I glanced to see what it was, and it was exactly what I thought it would be. I think that was, I think it was one of the highest grossing films of that year.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
It was everywhere as well, wasn't it? It was like I remember it like being one of the first, like I always call it, event films where
I agree.
You put on Steve Wright in the afternoon, and he was interviewing Linda Hamilton and stuff like that. The stars of this film were everywhere. There was a lot of hype around it, and again, like we say, not for the last time Cameron was doing things visually that hadn't been done before.
Even now, if there's a new Terminator film out, regardless of the critical reception, it's still very much an event movie, isn't it? I think.
Yes, but
well, obviously now to a lesser extent, but
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at its opening weekend was 52 million, which is absolutely enormous for 91. I would struggle to believe the new one's going to beat that. 28
even
years
though it's like
on,
official sequel, but no.
I think it will come in around the same actually. So we'll just have to see. But it was the most expensive film of all time. I think it may have been the first film to be over 100 million budget, but the budget actually figure you get varies slightly. I think we got it about a month later than the United States. I think a bit like Batman, we got it in August. And that's all I really want to say about my memories of the time. Do you remember enjoying it when you saw it the first time, Charlie?
Yeah, I loved it. Like you said, I'd seen Terminator not that long before, and we were really excited when we found out that that it was going to be a 15, which with the original film being an 18, it meant there was a chance we could see it in the cinema. And yeah, I remember seeing pictures of Arnie with Edward Furlong and Sarah Hamilton in a magazine a few months before, so I remember it kind of it didn't seem to really keep it secret that he was the hero character. But yeah, no, I absolutely loved it, and it was not maybe until I grew up a bit older and visited the original film a bit more, and I kind of started to form a more realistic opinion of it.
I think it's still largely considered. We won't go into opening thoughts yet, but I think it's still largely considered by probably a majority the best of the series. And I've just never agreed, but it has some strong positives to it. I think any time, a bit like Aliens, anytime you put a sequel out that's subtly in a different genre, you're doing something fairly brave in itself. And I think it's probably, I'd say this if you weren't here, Charlie, but with you here, you may want to comment on it as well, that I think never is it better represented than in its score. I think the score is a blockbuster film's version of the first film's score.
Yes.
And actually probably all the better for it. It suits this. And I really actually love the opening music, the way it's, orchestrated for this film. And you get pale copies in the weeks to come that aren't as good. So it's really, there are some enormously strong positives to this film, which we'll come to. But yeah, there's no doubt I prefer the first one. What about you two? How old were you when you saw it? Do you remember?
Oh God, let's think. It came out in '91, innit? So, but I think I would have seen sort of posts of it when I was maybe 9, probably. So obviously I hadn't seen it, but I'll probably be sort of 9 or maybe 10. No, it'd be 9. I remember obviously everyone's seen it. It was the hot movie, and I must have seen it a year or so later on video, playing basically at one of these sort of parties where your parents all get together and they shoved all the kids in one room, so we all just and they happen to have a copy of Terminator 2, so that's my first viewing, watching it there. And yeah, it's it was an instant classic, especially when you're growing up, like Charlie said, you initially love it, but as you grow up a little bit and you start to watch the first one more often, you actually sort of find out actually I much prefer the first one. And when I came to watching this more recently, I was actually surprised just how much this does not quite hold up for me. Not that it's awful, but I think especially director's cut, just how much this film drags, and it almost surprised me. It's I understand as Dave said that the it's pretty much 50-50, if not the slight majority would be towards this being the better film, but yeah, I just don't see it now. But then there are lots of things to like about it, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Becca, you saw them both recently, didn't you? In the same evening, you saw a double bill.
Yeah, they reissued the first one and the second one kind of back to back. Although not with. I I don't know why, but I've seen a couple of these reissues at the cinema. I would love for them to do like with cheesy adverts of the era. So like I went to a reissuing of the
Westless
Goonies.
hot dogs, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
literally. I thought there might be an advert for Brains Faggots or something like that in the in the middle or something along
Used to
those
have really
lines.
local ones as well. It used to advertise a curry house that was like just around the corner, and it would literally say like 100 yards from the entrance to this cinema.
Yeah, well, you see those on like the old Pearl and Dean adverts. If you go to a View Cinema, other cinema chains are available, and you'll see like vintage curry house adverts from the 70s or 80s. I seem to remember going to the cinema with my dad in a local cinema in Chippenham, and I think the ones they showed were genuine, as far as I'm aware. I'll ask my dad, see what he remembers. But anyway, it's now part of a national chain, so you kind of lost that family approach. And no cheesy curry house adverts, sadly. But yeah, I think I was 7 or 8 when this film came out, so I sadly didn't see them on release. Saw them probably in my teens. Unfortunately, I was one of those people who did, note past tense, did think the second one was better.
You're allowed to think that, you know.
I still do love it. I think
Given
Robert
we're
Patrick
the-
is for me, he's just the standout of it. Think of it, most unrelenting, killer, terrifying cyborg, there is. And I think for me, you probably got Hal, and then terrifying Robert Patrick. And then obviously when he appeared in the X-Files as Doggett many years later, again another gripping performance there. Can't really go wrong in casting him.
I've never watched a whole episode of the X-Files.
Oh, I say check out Tony Black's X-Files, the X-Files podcast. Highly recommend that.
I follow his website because we're like friends and stuff, so I've stuck a number on his follow account, but I've never seen an episode.
We'll give it a go, Dave. The truth is out there. Right, I'm just going to go and cringe now. But no, yeah, I saw them on both Terminator 1 and 2, Judgment Day, upon release, recently re-released. Blown away, utterly fantastic. But yeah, I sort of came out of it thinking, oh, okay, so I sort of re-evaluated my original opinions. But yeah, I do prefer the first one. But I love like all the, obviously to a certain extent it's a little bit ropey, but the graphics largely stand up. And Cameron's going to be one of those directors. He's always kind of looking to tweak, and as technology improves, he'll go back and I'm pretty sure he'll reboot Avatar in years to come.
Well, he's got a sequel.
He'll be doing
How many did he do? 4 or something? He's doing
4 or 5.
The first
4 or 5. I think he's got them all planned out.
The first film.
Definitely. But no, yeah,
In Donald Fagan of filmmakers.
still be there.
There's a fucking obscure reference.
Fun fact. But no, it's really 2 sort of classic films. It's really one of those things where, sort of pick an original film and a sequel, opposed, I guess compared to like sort of Bond or like Star Wars, for example, or Indiana Jones, or kind of any of the series that we've done so far in this podcast. But if you think of any film series generally in history, that the first 2 films are just totally iconic. But I had a really good time seeing these. But yeah, I did come out of thinking that, Terminator 2 is not a terrible film, but just in terms of sort of visuals and certainly plotting, that the first is very much a stronger film. But I say for the second film, for me, it's all about Robert Patrick. I think he's probably one of the terrifying cyborg figures. I shall have a think about my other villainous robots are maybe. But no, he's certainly up there, and it's his performance, and I think it's the fact that it still echoes within popular culture. I mean, Simpsons reference it many times, and even in sort of shows like Rick and Morty, for example, and even South Park has been going for many years. Maybe deemed irrelevant, but you see it in other sort kid shows or animated shows that are aimed at a young audience, and they're still kind of riffing on this idea. So just goes to show, really, and obviously Arnie still lingers in popular culture for sure. But it just goes to show like the real strength of its movie villain still lasts until this day. Sorry, it's quite long and rambling there. Sorry.
That's all right. This film does suffer from being in that little micro era we talked about. Do you remember when we talked about Rocky V? And we said
it's that kind of time zone, isn't it? Time
it
era.
could only have been made between like 89 and 91. Rocky V, when you watch it, it just there are just so many things in it, right down to like the sweaters they're wearing and stuff like that.
It's very 80s, 90s film.
This film absolutely screams 1990, 91. And it's funny because it's set in 1995 and it just doesn't work at all for that because he's meant to be 10, which is just odd because that kid is not 10. and he's wearing like a Public Enemy t-shirt with floppy hair and listening to Guns N' Roses, and that had just died by like 92. It's kind of funny that. I mean,
Yeah, because Nirvana happened and then that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nirvana
that's really
killed Cockroach.
yeah, basically. So yeah, a few things in the film don't really make that much sense, but I don't think largely they. I mean, in terms of the effects, they're just starting to creak. They're not too bad because they're only doing. Their ambition is to a certain level, and they can meet that level. So it's not trying to go beyond what it can do. But there are little things like when the T-1000 assumes the form of his foster mum. When she changes back from the foster mum to the T-1000, that is clearly like an absolutely still image of her. And little things like that are starting to show up now. But for 1991, this is extraordinary, and it's not that bad now. The thing is, though, I did watch something else in this debate of different cuts of the film. Somebody said to me that in the director's cut, he did some digital face replacement on Arnie's stunt double, and I didn't know that. So there were a couple of times where Arnie was doing a stunt, particularly on the bike early in the film, where I went, Christ, that looks like him, and I'm sure he didn't do that. But that could have been some digital face replacement. Apparently, the stunt double looks a little bit more Jean-Claude Van Damme, somebody was telling me. So I don't know. In terms of my
that's one of my fun facts. Sorry, I'll have to amend that later on.
in terms of like my first thoughts on the film, really, I mean, I was thinking the other day, and it was funny in my head because I thought this is the best prologue I've seen to a film since, and it's what came into my mind after the since. You thought I'd say something really like amazing.
Didn't XYZ.
No, it was Rocky 3. I thought that's the best prologue since Rocky 3. And we'll go into that in a minute. It certainly has a really cracking act 1 with some issues, but they're relatively minor. I really like the way the music's reorchestrated for this. It just immediately tells you're playing in a much, much more epic soundbit than the first.
Yes, I love this. The music as well. It's got a really great soundtrack to it.
It really, yeah. I mean, I can't speak necessarily for the soundtrack as a whole, but certainly the themes in it stick in my mind. I do have what some will see as a strengthening of the Sarah Connor character. I think as almost a dumbing down. I mean, there's a bit where she's in Mexico in the film, sat watching kids play with guns. I think it's that scene. And she's got like shades on and a wife beater in military colours with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth.
She basically looks like Axl Rose.
I can't think of a bigger fucking cliche to design somebody. And I just think like I understand the character will change and be damaged, but there's elements in this I don't like. It's underpinned by a really good performance. Robert Patrick's amazing, helped by the fact I think he had some kind of ankle injury, so he doesn't run quite symmetrically. And I think that's actually, it gives him another worldliness I like. I think the film misses it's a blockbuster, so it's to be expected, but there was a nihilism to the first film that is missing now, and I understand why, but the inevitability of Judgment Day really made sense in the first film. It doesn't make sense in future weeks, and we'll talk about it. Because when they say, "Oh, you've merely postponed it," well, if you've postponed it, you've stopped it. There's nothing inevitable. If you can shift a time frame, you can stop something. That's nuts. That doesn't make sense as an argument. But here, it has to finish on that bit of hope. There's a deleted scene. Again, we'll argue about whether that was in a director's cut or not. But there was a deleted scene of an older Sarah that I'm glad they took out because that was sick making. Just the whole thought of like, we stopped it, yay! I think Edward Furlong is almost film breaking. I really struggle with. I was only half joking when I said they should have dubbed. I was only half joking when I said they should have dubbed him with Isaac Hayes, because that voice is really irritating, and it's funny to watch him on special features, and they've got him doing sit-ups to prepare, and I'm thinking he's going to look like a weedy little twat, whatever you do.
Nice teenage boy.
What's the point? I think the problem is he doesn't have now. James Cameron, were he here, could probably defend this very well because the kid has not had a good upbringing. And because he hasn't had a good upbringing, what I'm about to say kind of makes some kind of sense, I suppose. But whenever I watched Edward Furlong, I always thought, you're not a very nice kid. And it doesn't surprise me he didn't grow into a very nice adult. The actual actor, he irritates the shit out of me in this film, and overacts in a lot of sequences, particularly when he has to be emotional and stuff. But by and large, it's got a really, really good final act for the most part. It's got a really good opening act with some issues. I've got some characterization issues. It misses that nihilism of the first film. It's not as good as the first film. The thing is, it falls into that generation of films, like lots of others we've talked about before, that people who are film reviewers now, critics, opinion formers and stuff, grew up on this stuff. So a bit like, I always say it, a Goldeneye, a First Contact, lots of films like that. It's a term Charlie doesn't like, but I'm going to use it. It's overrated on that basis. And by overrated, I simply mean it occupies a general consensus in pop culture opinion that I think is actually fairly objectively wrong. That said, if you were to enjoy Terminator 2 more than the first one, because it isn't as nihilistic, it's more beautifully shot, it's got nicer music, it's more digestible, I could understand all that. And it's still a very, very high quality sequel.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue. I mean, I can kind of understand with the Edward Furlong thing and the John Connor. I mean, him as a character is kind of understandable. Like I could see but the problem is, at times he just plays like Bart Simpson. You know, because he's like he just says like these proper really 90s things that only Bart Simpson would ever say, like
Hasta la vista, baby.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, you know, yeah, such a drag, man. You know, these
it's very
kind
80s
of things,
and 90s catchphrases, aren't they?
Yeah, and he's like, you know, when James Cameron has to like sort of forcibly in this sort of like kind of like humanity sucks, huh? Like kind of thing, you know. It's like
Cringe.
Love you.
Oh, it's like there's such yeah, it's. I think it's just it's just such 1991.
This film was like so 1991.
Yeah, well, pretty much, because you know I think once you get out of that decade, it just dates the film. You know, despite the special effects, but yeah, but as Dave says, like you know, technology and as a big blockbuster, it works absolutely fine. I mean, I think Arnie's great in it. He's great as taking the character of Terminator and making him a more heroic kind of figure. And I think that's probably where like the heart of the film is, because I think the only real new idea that I think Cameron brings in is the idea of like, well, can artificial intelligence kind of be on par with like a human, as in having some kind of a soul or conscience? You know, is the idea of like of creating like something that actually thinks for itself, comparable as like having like something like just like a human would. That's about it. I think everything else kind of follows the first film, relatively speaking, but just a bit more longer and extended.
I don't think any of us are going to say this is an unworthy sequel. I think you could say you could have a certain nostalgia for there only being one Terminator film out there, but once you agree to sequelize, this is about as well as you're going to do it.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, it's definitely in terms of like the history of sequels go. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it in relation to the first film, and it's kind of an awkward retcon anyway. I mean, you look at...
Well, even the message.
Well, yeah, the message, the no fate thing isn't obvious. It's like, it's what my dad said. No, he didn't know. In no part of the film did he ever say that. And the whole thing that where Reese is very kind of... They make
Perhaps he said it on the vinegar strokes. We didn't see those. By the way,
I'm trying to make a serious point.
Sorry.
No, sorry.
It was during that cut between two different nipple shots. He quickly said it. Go on, sorry.
Yeah. So Reese made a massive point about them smashing it once he went through. So then this whole thing of they sent another one through, and then the Resistance sent another one through, and it's like, fair enough. You need, it's just something you've just got to get over. But yeah, I mean, just the whole film just feels like it's almost like Cameron, because Cameron's now got money, he can do the things that he maybe wanted to do. It's like George Lucas in the prequels.
Yeah.
He can do the things he wanted to do. He perhaps had his original ideas, but didn't have the budget to do. So now in the opening Future War prologue, which is still really good, and that moment where the Terminator's foot comes down and crushes the skull scared the hell out of everyone in the cinema. That was like a really memorable moment.
Well, I jumped the first time, and then the second time, just quickly, I knew it was coming, and I was like with someone who hadn't seen it, and I tried to shit them up. I went to grab them as it did it, and I made like a little bit of a noise as well, like "Ugh," like that, right? And they just looked at me like I was mental and didn't jump at all. I looked like a fucking idiot. But there you go. Sorry, I did jump twice at that.
But it's obviously now you've got hundreds of Terminators and multiple hunter-killer units and stuff, and it's kind of gone from establishing an atmosphere to kind of showing off a bit, and it still works. And I mean, I think that whatever you think about the film, it's still a very important film in terms of the production and the effects mainly. And it just kind of continues that, but it kind of gets boring for me. Kind of the first act is really good, and Robert Patrick is amazing.
Yes.
And you're talking about the music. I love that. There's kind of like his theme is like a vacuum cleaner. So, and it's really good, and it's a really good alternative to the Terminator theme, which is itself is kind of rejigged here to be kind of different to the original one. It's a lot more metallic as well. But it's that, I mean, and we'll talk about it in more detail, but it's that moment where you get to them at the hospital where they're rescuing Sarah, and it's a really good moment, and she sees the Terminator and she runs from him, and it's brilliant, and then he goes, "Come with me if you want to live." And it's just like, oh my God, really?
You think he was programmed to say that?
And from there...
It's a classic line, though.
Yeah. It's like the way he says, "I'll be back" later in the film.
It's very cheesy, though, isn't it? It is very cheesy, but it's one of those, iconic movie lines. If you look up a list of all-time top cinema quotes, chances are that and "I'll be back" will be up there. But it's just like, oh, really?
Especially where, and we talk again about the director's cut. There are a couple of scenes in the director's cut where the theatrical cut kind of makes no sense without them.
Oh, I agree. I think I said there's no perfect cut of this film.
Yeah, because there's the point like halfway through where he just starts randomly smiling.
He does it when he looks at the guns, and it always jarred.
And then there's the bit where he says, "Oh, trust me, I'll be back, trust me," or whatever he says before he goes to not kill any of the police officers, and he smiles.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't really particularly like the scene in the director's cut, which it all stems from. But even so, without that, it just kind of seems really, really strange. And
we need to refer to the director's cut as we go through. But, I've got problems with that scene, but it's more the pacing of it. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Is that about him having a learning chip?
Yes.
Because it was on recently on ITV this week, so I watched it like a second time, and that seemed to be like the original, or at least the non-director's cut.
Them discussing it in the car is in the original. Them actually taking it out of his head to reprogram it is not.
Now, I did notice there was like literally when they are like taking like the bullets out, where that scene starts to stem from. Arnie does mention that I have, and it edits itself that he explains that I have a chip and it's a learning computer, and it just cuts. Or it briefly cuts, so it cuts out all the bit where he explains the fact that he needs to be activated and you need to do, and it cuts that whole bit. But I think, and I could be wrong, in the original theatrical cut, that it does make sense in terms of it does have Arnie mention that I have a learning computer. So like the more I learn, the more I learn, and that's it. So that does explain, but it just doesn't have the stuff about them trying to activate it by taking it out and things like that.
There's some there are some good things in the director's cut. We'll talk about it, but it unbalances the film.
Yeah.
The Act 2 of the film's baggy anyway. So put that deleted stuff in, and it just makes it worse. And Sarah,
it does suffer from that.
Sarah behaves like a fucking idiot in that scene as well. The cut scene, Sarah's an idiot, but we'll talk about it in a bit. But there are scenes in Act 1 I like.
But yeah, to speak to what Charlie was saying about broadly, that the middle film, where you have literally about 40 minutes without the T-1000 does not make an appearance, and you feel it, it finally, like when you get to Skynet, and then Robert Patrick shows up again, that you think, oh, thank God, a threat. Do you know what I mean? You feel like, you think, hang on, you got your principal villain on the chase, and he's not made an appearance yet. We've not seen him. Do you know what I mean? And I think the film suffers that.
You could feel his shadow.
Yeah.
Whereas you couldn't in this one, because they were on the move. It was quite clear he didn't know where they were instantly. You know what I mean? So,
but he knew what he was up to. He knew he was constantly on the chase. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely got some problems. I mean, when we come to future weeks, Charlie's right about they sent another one through, but I thought give it that pass. But in future weeks, when they keep sending different models through again, you just think, okay. And when we get to Dark Fate, which we're going to record. Actually, Becca wasn't online when we were talking about this, but we're going to look to record it before we get to the end of the series, just because of where we are in our schedule. So we'll probably record Dark Fate before Genesis. But when you get to Genesis and Dark Fate, there's new models again, and you just go, none of this makes any sense at all. You kind of give it the pass here, though.
I think so. Just a point on that Charlie made about the score. I do think it is kind of, you say it's very metallic. It does sound, I was going to say mechanical, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It kind of very industrial.
Reminds me of Iron Man with his hammer.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking, I was thinking, what does it remind me of? Oh yeah, it's a very kind of very much industrial, especially when they get to the factory as well. I think that's a very interesting point, and I agree with Yars.
Okay, shall we discuss this film sequentially, folks?
Well, that depends on which sequence you're on about.
Well, actually, all versions of the film opened in the same place, thankfully. And I have to say, I can't swear that it was first viewing, because let's remember, I was 14. But very early in my life of knowing this film, I've always watched this sequence going, I'm being manipulated, but I'm perfectly happy to be manipulated. In that the way they play our emotions in the opening sequence and through the titles is actually, it's playing every emotion it can. Swing, kid swings on fire and things like that. But we start with what was then modern day traffic jams in what we assume is LA, I'm assuming. And then cuts immediately to 2029 with a bit of a whiteout effect to kind of hint at the bombs. And Linda Hamilton voiceover, which I don't think kicks in until that foot comes down, does it? Or does she say a little bit first?
She says it before, yeah.
She says a little bit first.
She says it as it's panning across, again, the kind of rubble, and you see kind of bits of...
3 billion lives ended on August 29th, 1997. Yeah, and they never actually referenced the year the film is set in, only obliquely, in that John's date of birth is February 1985. I always thought it was 1994, but then I was thinking back to when he was conceived, not born. He was born in early 85, which means if he's 10, it's 95. And she's just basically saying 3 billion lives were ended on that day. We see a bit from the future war, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, we see a bit older John Connor.
Yeah, well, it cuts
Yes.
to like a little sort of garrison, if you like, and she says, as before, a Terminator was sent. No, 2 Terminators were sent back. There is a gap in the dialogue, and when it comes back, she says, as 2 Terminators were sent. Well, the first to strike at me before John was born. The second when he was a boy. As before, the Resistance were able to send back a lone protector for John. And it actually pans forward to see his scarred face, which is another thing they try to explain in Salvation. We actually see him get that scar in Salvation. And he's quite the lantern jaw middle-aged man by this point, isn't he? He's about 44 at this stage, John Connor.
He still looks a bit like, as you say, like the matinee hero, though.
Yeah, a little bit.
Obviously kind of battle scarred.
This guy would make a decent Punisher or something.
Yeah, very much in that vein.
And then the film starts to physically slow down into slow motion. And then we go into the credits, which is basically the world on fire. And this is actually affecting. It really is quite affecting, even though we are being played here, but it's really, really affecting stuff.
It is a score, though. It's like just the Terminator theme, just bigged up, and you think, full on, great.
Yeah, because they use a chorus as well.
Even yes, they do, and even the timing of it, the swings are slowed down.
Yeah,
it's very much like Roger Moore pushing those women over in The Spy Who Loved Me, Chris. That's a
little bit like that.
Love so much, but there isn't any. What's that? Too late.
Never mind.
And then it just ends with the T-800 appearing from the flames and coming right up to sort of eye level with the camera, and that's it.
And then you have like the steely sort of like close down, and it's also kind of does it start with like a truck?
Yeah, it kind of slams down, and then it's kind of the grill of the truck.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the arrival of. Right, now I haven't seen this for a couple of weeks now because of our recording schedule. Which one arrives first? It's Arnie first.
Arnie arrives at the biker bar.
I suppose it would have to be if he was the good guy. Cause you'd want, okay. He arrives and goes to a biker bar. The effect of them arriving's changed a little bit. They arrive in kind of like a perfect circle that burns the world around them. So there's a crevice in the floor and like
out of the truck. There's a big chunks out the truck.
With the T-1000, there's a bit of the catch fencing burnt away as well. He goes straight to a biker bar. This is the only Terminator arrival that's got anything on the first one, really. It's okay. He goes into this biker bar and just, for clothes.
Yeah.
I think that's it. This is it. And this is the kind of one of the elephants in the room about this film is the whole thing of him being a Terminator that doesn't terminate anyone.
Yeah,
Given that it takes halfway through the film before John Connor does this stupid "I swear I will not kill anyone" thing, then he's, and especially if the film is trying to keep up this pretension that Arnie is still a bad Terminator.
Well, he disemboweled one of the guys in the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Ripped his guts out.
Exactly. And so in here, it's like he throws one guy through a window, fair enough, might have done some pretty bad damage, but then he stabs another guy in the thing, and then the other guy's like, leave him alone. The other guy backs off, where really it should be a slaughter. But then, if it's not slaughter, it can't lead to the bit where he steals the guy's sunglasses to the fucking bad to the bone.
I still don't.
It's not quite the same, is it? It's a bit. I think that's why he appears, as one of my fun facts last weekend. Obviously, he's on the AFI list for being a hero and a villain. So.
Well, he stole the glasses, and I thought that's purely for iconography because you're an infiltration unit and you're putting on shades at night.
But also if his eye gets screwed up.
It's because he's bad to the bone.
Oh, that's sorry.
because at least in the first one, when he had his eye got messed up, he wore sunglasses to cover that.
To cover it up.
Yeah. But,
He doesn't really need them to see, does he? So
no. Though Arnold Schwarzenegger said that he tried in all of the entries not to blink. And he said there's some mistakes in the first one. So I'd already seen the first one when I read that.
I'll be looking out for the new one. I'll be looking to see him blink.
When I watched this one, I was aware of that and I watched it and I noticed one blink and it's in the bar. It is in the bar when he looks down. I think it's when the cigar's burnt on him. He looks down and then as he looks up again, he slightly blinks. But it's very, very slight. It's almost like he knows he mustn't. So I suppose that helps if you've got shades on. You can blink as much as you like.
Yeah, he just spends all his time going, oh,
the eyes are dry. Can I put some shades on? Yeah, so he steals a motorcycle and some shades and a gun.
And looks bad to the bone.
Yeah.
And then we get the second Terminator.
I do feel sorry for those guys because they're just like just a bunch of bikers who just got the fucking asses kicked, and the guy's got serious burns and got his spike nits and.
Well, the one slapped at the shoulder probably couldn't finish his pool game.
Yeah.
So I think there were a couple of cuts that were in the initial film that are now restored. Like when he lands on the hob,
right?
He kind of pushes up and down with his palms, whereas before he just landed on the hob and then
and fell off,
slumped on the floor. Yeah.
Burn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The second Terminator's arrived without us seeing him arriving. We see the aftermath. A police officer turns up to see whatever this electrical disturbance was, and a big, big hole in the catch fencing, which is clearly where he arrived. And I just love the lack of a reveal here, in that, like, Robert Patrick walks up to him naked, and then something happens, and this guy goes over, and you go, "What happened there? Has he stolen a knife or what?" And yeah, we'll find out. What about where from there?
I mean, it's kind of ambiguous because before you don't see anything. Could have just given him an uppercut and stole his clothes.
Yeah. Well, there was something in the gut, wasn't it, basically? So I suppose he could have punched him or something.
It could have just been like Arnie in the first one, where he just rips that guy's stomach through.
All right, yeah.
Actually, just as an aside, looking on the BBFC website, that when the film was released over here on VHS in 1991, it was cut by 18 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
So it was cut for home video initially.
Well, I'm wondering, was it R-rated over there, or was it?
It was, yeah.
It was R-rated.
R-rated, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But and then, is it to the hospital next?
You have John and the foster parents, and he's like there, he's there with his mate with his mullet on the revving his bike.
Yeah. He's obviously seen the Living Daylights. He knows that you must only ever have one song on you.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, just the famous.
Honestly, the length of time that You Could Be Mine runs, it's incredible.
He must have only got the single on cassette.
It's either the 12-inch version or he's just got the one song. That's it.
But he hasn't got a very fetching set of balloons to hand out along the way. That's where he falls down.
All right. Oh, yes. Sorry, I clued into what you were talking about then.
Sorry, that was a quite obscure reference. Sorry.
Yeah. And the thing is, whenever I think of that character, I always think of him at the safe house at the start of the film.
Yeah, that's true. He hasn't got a milk bottle to lob.
Yeah. So yeah, this kid is in the garage working on a bike with his mate, and his father walks out, or his foster father walks out. No, it's his mother, isn't it?
Yeah.
His foster mother walks out.
Yeah,
it's like, "John, tidy your room," and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just not particularly thoughtful dialogue.
It's Vasquez.
The sorts of things you say to a kid. Yeah, it is. It's Vasquez from Aliens. I'm trying to think of the character's name. The actress's name. It
is Jeanette Goldstein. And
Jeanette Goldstein.
And Jeanette's her name in the. Sorry, Janelle is her name in the.
Yeah, it's Todd and Janelle, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm looking for them here. I'm struggling to find them. Hang on a minute.
And Xander Berkeley.
Yeah.
Xander Berkeley's been in loads and loads of stuff, but he was in the first couple of seasons of 24. And in the second season, he is literally Jack Bauer's boss, and he ends up dying of radiation poisoning.
He was the guy.
or he's got radiation poisoning and actually performs an heroic act when he's dying anyway, sort of thing.
And was the guy who was shagging Al Pacino's wife in Heat.
Right. Oh, yes. Yes, it was.
He says, "You can have my wife, but you can't have my TV."
That's a real shit. If that was like a Marvel film, that would be the worst kiss off line ever.
He was also the bad security guy in the Air Force One.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I haven't seen that for a while.
Fun fact.
I've only seen it once. Jeanette Goldstein, I'm just looking up now. No, it's linking to the wrong person. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She's been in loads of stuff as well. But yeah, in James Cameron world, obviously best known as Vasquez, who was another kind of hilariously one-dimensional character. Everyone talks about how Cameron writes amazing women, and he writes strong women, and respect to him for that. But I'm not sure they're that nuanced. But okay, so I think she goes in, complains to Xander. Xander goes out and, come in and do what you're told and all the rest of it. And she's not my mother, tard. And I immediately think, I'm not going to like this little shit, am I?
Oh, God.
And he drives off he drives off with his friend who has a spectacular ginger mullet.
It's very 80s, 90s mullet. Oh, dear.
It's great. It's great in its way. I mean, I wouldn't want one.
You just know they sort of talk about forming a band, don't you?
You shouldn't be watching a film like this and thinking of Rhys Dinsdale in Home to Roost with the 1980s sitcom with John Thorpe.
I might be one of the few people who got that reference.
Yeah, I've just realised if you're much younger than 40, you won't know that reference. Okay. So yeah, they drive off, and then we cut straight to the Asylum, Pescadero State Hospital. It is.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Asylum is a PC word now anymore, but yeah, she's in an institution anyway for the criminally insane.
Yeah.
And criminally insane, so she has committed criminal acts trying to stop Judgment Day and all the rest of it. And I think we start with her talking to what's the character called? Earl Bones' character. Silberman from the first film.
Yeah, because he's doing a tour, isn't he?
He's doing a tour, and you're getting introduced about where Sarah is.
The tour is first. Is the tour first? Yes,
it is. Because
the first time we see her is when she lands off that bar, isn't it?
Yeah,
she's
when
doing
she's
pull-ups.
doing the pull-ups.
Yeah. And it's just a little bit of background, actually, because he's telling the people on the tour effectively the plot of the first film very quickly. And not that he says, and that guy from Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, was in it. Morning, Sarah. How's the knee?
Yeah.
She stabbed him in the knee at some point. I can't remember where in the director's cut. I wish we'd recorded closer. Sorry, folks, but I certainly wasn't going to watch it again. I watched it twice. But there is a scene with Kyle Reese in the director's cut.
That's later on, because that's
after she... Right, that's the reminder. I needed to say it to prompt me on where it was, and it's after she's drugged later.
Yeah.
Because she's drugged, and then it's a dream sequence, we find out. Do we go straight to...
We see two people show up at John's house, Foster
I was going to say, logically, in filmmaking terms, you cannot cut straight to her talking to Silberman. You can't, because you can't cut from two characters in one place to another. So, yes, it's the T-1000 turning up.
It's a good-looking boy.
Yes, what we forgot to say is when he killed the policeman at the start, he got in and got on the police computer and found John Connor's address and date of birth, which is why we know it was February 1985. And yeah, they know who's looking after him. So he turns up, obviously, as a policeman and says, I need to ask him some questions. And she says, a bigger guy, a biker guy, was here earlier. Is it anything to do with that? So we know Arnie's been there as well. And he says, no, I wouldn't worry about him. Now, there is a deleted scene. It's not even in the director's cut. And I don't know if it's now or later, because it is a deleted scene. So I don't know if they invited him in at this point in that deleted scene, or whether it is later when he in fact kills them. But there is a scene where the T-1000 goes into John's bedroom, unoccupied. John's not there. I'm presuming he's either off with Arnie or he's at the mall, depending on when in the film it is, because I can't even remember whether it was night or day. I think it was daytime, which is why I think it was here. And he's just walking around the room in an almost feline fashion, just touching things, touching the books and just rubbing his hands along surfaces and things like that. And it is that sense of him as quite a sort of, or his skill set being quite sensual. And I like it. I don't know how much sense it makes, because really you've only got to sort of see or touch someone to be able to change into them and all the rest of it. But I just like it as a little scene they cut.
Yeah, it's just like a nice little extra, isn't it?
Mm. But again, if you cut him for time, it's not essential.
So we cut from that to.
It must be Silberman, mustn't it?
No, well, we get so we get a cut to that to John sort of stealing cash,
stealing money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's like
money. He's a twat.
Yeah, so
he's got this computer thing that he can basically attach to a credit card, put into a machine, an ATM, and it will narrow down to what the pin is. So he was able to withdraw $300, which I'm assuming is the daily maximum over there. Or
look at the size of that machine as well.
Yeah, discreet, isn't it? That's why he's only got one room.
I've got one in my pocket.
That's why he's only got room for one song in his bag.
Yeah, he's only got one pocket.
Yeah, he would have been driving.
Also, like miniaturization was still. I mean, if you look at sort of something like the like the Walkmans, for example, like the cassette players, or I don't know when the CD players arrived on the scene. That was probably mid to late 90s, I would imagine, 80s.
Early 80s. Although
they're
album,
huge, aren't they? Really big, clunky things.
The album that massively popularised the compact disc in terms of sales was Brothers in Arms.
That was it.
Which came out in 85, so that'll tell you when it was all taken off.
Accounting for taste.
Yeah, that's back when people potentially thought Dire Straits was modern classical music. Anyway,
that was like that.
Anyway,
so this establishes like the fact that he's got, as 90s films involving kids have got tech skills. So it established the fact
got tech skills.
That he can hack his way out of the security in a big complex of a corporation with really high tech.
Yeah, that's what they should do. Just 10-year-old with them, and you'd be all right. So yeah, they head off to the Galleria.
The Galleria.
I don't know. It's like the way he says that line. I don't know why.
So it's from there we get to the Carl Reese dream.
Well, it's not quite at this point. She's in consultation with Silberman, and we're seeing footage of her. We think 6 months earlier, and she's with Silberman. They're filming these consultations, and they're showing her a film of a previous consultation where she utterly lost her shit, saying that like, you're all dead. This all goes. Everybody dies. You, me, everybody. And she's screaming. And eventually they pause the video, and she's calmly. They've made her far too pale and white. It's all so unsubtle. And she's smoking a cigarette because all commando types obviously, tar helps. And,
it's because she's now hard, Dave.
Right,
she's hard and a badass.
What it is, yeah. She's hard as nails, so therefore she has to be smoking.
So
a
in
cigarette.
other words, the cast of Coronation Street in the '60s must have been rock fucking solid.
I must say it's one of those films, obviously, because like now, you don't. It's banned, heavily discouraged. But it's one of those films like it's as we said earlier in the show, it's very much of this era. But obviously seeing this at the cinema, I was like, there's a lot of smoking in this movie.
Yeah, there's a fair bit.
I've got a problem with this very much of the time. It does kind of show, a character's toughness, especially female character's toughness as well. But it's just not having seen a lot of it on screen, or especially if it's in like a period piece, for example, like Mad Men, for example, set in sort of the 50s and 60s. Everybody smokes, but yeah, I was just like, bloody hell,
What amazes me is like a film with like a lot of characters smoking and a lot of running. No one seems to be a bit.
No, it was like,
oh my god!
They can all climb flight stairs with the ease and grace of a cat.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, it's fine.
Times have changed faster than you think as well, because it wasn't that long ago I saw the Only Fools and Horses episode where Del became a father. and Rodney was smoking.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Rodney was smoking in the hospital corridor, and that was 1991.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was that late. But yeah,
Oh, also, yeah, very recent change in British law, and then obviously, smoking inside has been banned. It's just after, kind of being discouraged in everyday life. Obviously, people still do it, but it just seems weird to see it on screen, and certainly of my generation.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's really hard, definitely.
I just thought of Austin Powers then. Do you smoke after sex? I don't know. I never looked.
I don't know. That's actually quite funny.
That was quite funny.
I find that quite funny.
Yeah, so do I. But anyway.
Should laugh, but...
I know. And the thing is, we're now finding it far funnier than it actually was. Because you giggled a bit, which has started me off. You spoke after sex. I don't know. I never know. Anyway.
So that was hilarious. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's just you in a nutshell, Austin. No, this is me in a nutshell. Help! I'm in a nutshell. How did this happen?
What is this?
I remember us doing that whole sequence, right? And then me apologising to listeners because they weren't going to enjoy it as much as we did. Yeah, so the interview here, she's trying to play calm, and she's basically saying, you said if I'd shown improvement, I could see my son. So she's done what she's required to do for the 6 months, which makes you wonder how long ago she stabbed him in the knee then. But obviously, he then starts saying, look, you're smart. You're going to tell me what I want to hear. I think if I put you to minimum security, you're just going to try and escape again. And then she starts fairly calmly to start with saying, I need to see my son. He's naked without me. And of course, as he's refusing and saying, you'll have to wait another 6 months, she leaps across the table and starts going at him again. Mm. And that's where she is sedated and taken back to her room. And that's where in the director's cut you get the Carl Reese scene. The only thing I want to ask, you've all seen the theatrical cut recently, is the orderly licking her face in the theatrical version?
That's later on. I remember that. That's like when the T-1000 gets there, because she's sedated. Because
is it in the theatrical cut though?
No,
I always thought that was a weird beat. Like just a little beat to suggest he's a bit of a pervert.
I think it still is, yeah. After that bit where he says where she's sedated and taken away.
Yeah. She's sedated and she's basically tied to bed.
Because there is more. I think there is more in the director's cut. There's more of them like sort of forcibly getting the pills down her, because like after the initial visit, he says to her,
Well, they kick the shit out of her in the director's cut.
Basically,
they do. Yeah, they do.
To make her take her pills, because she says, I'm not taking them, Dougie.
Yeah, it's when she escapes later. I do get a little bit confused on the running order of this thing.
Yeah.
When she's taken back to her room, she's on the floor and she actually has the dream then.
Yeah.
And it's not immediately obvious it's a dream. And well, it is if you've ever seen a film, but it's not super signposted, except it is slightly soft focus. Kyle's in her room and Michael Biehn has not aged in 7 years.
No.
It looks like he's walked straight off the set of the first one.
He still looks the same.
He looks identical in what he's dressed in, everything. And obviously, we just reviewed the first film, so I'd seen it with it a couple of days before, and it was like he looks exactly the same. And it's a pep talk. It's a pep talk, but it's also back to that thing Chris said at the end of the last one. We loved a lifetime. It's just reminding you of that. There's still that
he does
connection in the mind.
Soldier.
Yeah.
The way he says it is lovely on the page, and I hated that line. Oh God, you're repeating that line, are you? Which was only something she said to G him up at the end when he was dying. Yeah. But he just says, "On your feet, soldier," and he says it really softly to her.
Yeah.
And he says something along the lines of, "We don't have much time."
Yeah. Where's our son, Sarah?
Where's our son, Sarah? But again, some of the information is there in the original Silberman thing, because we've already been told about this soldier that came back and she fell for. We've already been told that she believes that John is quote unquote naked without her. So I can see why they cut it, because you don't need Kyle to be telling her that as well. But I like the scene. I think it's a shame it's not in the final film. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, to be honest, I could have done without the I think could have done without the interview. Really, to be honest with you, like the fact that the whole Sarah smoking a cigarette, and because the way she plays it almost like it's just she is literally crazy, and is openly trying to manipulate a way to
it's really
escape.
obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, and you think, well, if you are literally Sarah Connor and you know that you're not mental, you know this is all true and or whatnot, you'd be smarter than this. You would be absolutely hands up, doctor, I'm completely normal, come on, you know this kind of thing. You would not be this like, and you'd be smart enough not to go and fucking belt him around the head when he denies you. Do you know what I mean?
Leaping across tables and stuff.
It's just I just don't think you need it. And I think from the point where you last saw Sarah Connor, like getting drugged up, you could have cut that later on to her waking up with the dream sequence. And you not missed anything. I don't think this the stuff with the psychologist guy really adds anything. Really, I think it just sort of just makes it seems like Sarah Connor's gone mental. I don't know what you guys think.
I got mixed feelings on it because I think there is a slight indication that it has actually played with her mental health. She's got the responsibility of what she knows that virtually no one else knows, and if she tries to tell anyone else, they're not going to believe her anyway. And she's, driven to try and do what she can to stop something she's sort of been told is inevitable. And she's panicking because her son's out there. And I mean, it depends on. You could get very philosophical about time travel and inevitability of timelines and stuff, but if John Connor grows into a great military leader, I would have thought that if you kind of behave fairly naturally, that will happen. Whereas she's shacked up with a load of military blokes over the years and stuff like that, and I'm not convinced that's Sarah Connor, even under all this stress. So I'm not sure. I
mean, there is a bit of like dialogue. I think when I'm not sure when it was like John was stealing the money or whatnot before, or it might be sort of just afterwards. But she explains why she is and what effect that had on her, because like she built up for him like, you're going to be this great military leader, and then everyone's like, oh sorry kid, your mum's a psycho, didn't you know? So that's why he's a bit like fucking resentful, a bit angry.
That's when he speaks after he finds out that the Terminator is protecting him. That's when he's kind of processing that it's real.
But he does say something to his friend at the cash point.
Oh yeah, he just says she's a psycho. He says, where'd you learn all this stuff from? And he says, my mum, my real mum. He says she's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, and he says, no, she's a psycho. She's in Pescadero because she tried to blow up a robot factory.
I don't know what she tried to blow up, but it was something, and it would probably be whatever Cyberdyne it was. Yeah. Okay, so we've got. I don't know. This is where I lose the thread because we've gone into director's cut and back out. When she in the director's cut, Kyle sort of cuts to the door in that like he's with her, hugging her, and when she looks left, he's in the doorway, and he says, I don't know the exact words, but it is like we don't have much time.
Yeah.
And he starts heading down the corridor, and this is where it completely signposts, if you haven't picked up already, that it's a dream sequence. The way she runs down the corridor, the way the camera's moving is very dream sequencing. And he goes down and he walks around a corner, and she can't see him. So when she gets around the corner, there's sort of some fire escape doors, and when she opens them, she goes out and actually sees the end of the world.
Yeah, shows up as a big playground.
Yeah, not the version that's in the theatrical cut, which is another reason lose one. You don't need to see it twice. The version where she sees a younger version of herself, which is clearly 34-year-old Linda Hamilton in 27-year-old Linda Hamilton's wig. It looks like an older woman playing younger. That is in the theatrical cut later when she falls asleep in Mexico. Then I can't now. I cannot remember what happens next in terms of. I can't remember how she ends up. Does she see Silberman twice? Because she steals a paperclip, doesn't she?
Yeah.
This is but that's later on when the police are there. So
that's a little bit later.
Yeah, because
Gotcha. I realise what it was now.
Because he's trying to break out.
The next scene is kind of cut between this sort of thing, because there is like a bit when Sarah's trying to persuade people like to try to like sort of, but about but these are all lies. Well, like but they but you said that they had like they had the technology or something like that. And you said that, or you said that they lied, or why? And she says, well, why would they? They cuts like Dyson.
Yeah, and then so I'm guessing after the car resplit, then it goes back to John.
Yeah, there's a longer Dyson bit in the director's cut as well. You see a bit more of him with his family and working
in the arcade.
Yeah. Oh, the arcade. Yeah, playing like I don't know, Outrun or something like that. What was he playing? He was playing quite a well-known game. Afterburner. That was it. Yeah.
Classic game.
I think he played Tempest first, which was the kind of really, really old school thing where it says the end. And then he went on and played Afterburner.
Okay.
Is there like Outrun in there as well, or
I would imagine so, because that was they were both around the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of I've got fond memories of playing that with my dad whenever we go to an arcade.
Oh, I grew up on it because I grew up in Minehead.
Mm.
Back in the 80s, the arcades were in full flow and really popular.
Of course, yeah.
And so they had all of those.
Yeah, I might have been there on many a family occasion.
Constantly.
No, I bet, definitely.
And he runs into the T-1000 runs into the mullet mate.
Yeah, he's been asking people, have you seen this kid? Because he takes a picture.
The Galleria?
Galleria?
Yeah, he bumps into Mullet Boy and
80s Mullet Man.
Points him the other way, and then runs and sort of replaces John playing Afterburner, and John sort of starts heading off, and I think some girls tell the T-1000 he's down there, and that's where the whole thing
they
starts.
Point down. Really. Yeah, because Mullet Boy reappears and goes, "Hey, I think I saw that guy," and he just pushes him.
That's his name.
Just go, mate. I'll stall him.
We have seen Arnie on the bike. When they were on the bike earlier, Arnie did make a visual. Matt, John. So Arnie has been following him as well. We just haven't been watching Arnie. Arnie is now at the Galleria as well. So John runs through like a little escape door into a corridor and immediately sees the T-800.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is where the reveal is, isn't it?
Well, his mother has probably described this thing quite vividly to him, because you can immediately see a look of recognition.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, it does help the fact that Arnie's quite a striking fellow anyway. And especially matched with probably dressed in like sort of like a biker level, that kind of thing.
So also helps he was in Total Recall, which was out. That's all you got to say. He was in Total Recall.
He looks like that sort of Austrian, like world's strongest man. That guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we'd had John Thor as the Terminator, then it would have been a lot more effective.
Well, yeah, but only if they've not seen Inspector Morse.
the Sweeney.
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't that be fucking glorious?
So, starring John Thor and Dennis Waterman as Carl Reese, right?
Oh, the Sweeneys. Oh,
David Foster's the T-1000, yeah.
Shut it!
You slag.
All right. So, the first fight kicks off. Oh, of course, we do not know this thing's liquid metal at this point.
No.
Yeah.
What a reveal. What a reveal this was. I mean, I knew because I'd seen the TV spot, but yeah.
I think everyone knew by the time they saw it. But
yeah, Dave actually had the inside knowledge.
That's what happens when you watch, ITV on a Saturday morning. I'm most upset with myself that I was clearly watching a commercial channel. What's wrong with me? So first SmackDown, Arnie's clearly protecting him as well. So we instantly know that. He shot several times in the back, knocks open a door, pushes him out of the way. Somebody gets caught in the crossfire and shot several times. And we do see the whole liquid metal sort of deform and reform thing. And we also see him get out his gun and trample on roses. There you go. That explains the song. It was in the video. It was in the music video.
But Arnie was carrying a gun with roses.
Yeah. So John runs off to get on his little bike, really, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Arnie's chucked through a window in the middle of the mall, which I thought I remembered from the first film as well. I might have done. I can't remember. I can't remember if he was chucked through a window in the first film or not. I can't remember.
The Tech Noir was because he was shot through it.
I mean, if I've got it confused with Beverly Hills Cop, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, he was kind of in the same position when he got shot in the. He got shot through the kind of some kind of glass separated thing in Tech Noir.
That's what it is.
And he got thrown on his back.
Yeah, although the photos they used to compare with Sarah are from the police station anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's where the T1000 looks at the mannequin.
Yeah, fair enough. Whatever. I didn't make too much of that.
And there's a cameo by the co-writer William Wisher, who's the guy.
I would not have recognised that.
The guy with the camera.
Oh, okay. He was right, was he?
That's another fab fact. Oh my god. Damn it.
Fun fact. You've been listening.
Another fun fact.
Did I steal your fun fact?
They still have my fab fact. Yeah, that's another one of my fun
facts.
facts.
Because you've been listening to the
I'm going to mix up another podcast. But I've just found an equally interesting, well, it's kind of interesting, but not very fun fact. But yeah, no, he does appear.
Too much money.
Yeah, too much moulage.
John thought it was too expensive, yeah.
He was too busy and expensive, so...
So they went to Frost, they got David Jason instead, perfect.
It was really good, that was a good series.
No, alright.
Recommend the books.
Alright. Big chase sequence now.
This chase sequence.
T1000 runs out, pulls a guy off. No, he doesn't. Pulls a guy out of the cab of his truck and jumps into that. And he's after John now. And people who know LA tell me this is a bit like watching Rocky run through like Philadelphia. The geography of this is apparently all over the shot.
Yeah, geography is
really frustrating.
Yeah, and they use the canals, don't they? Because if you've ever seen the film Blue Thunder, there's a whole bit where the two helicopters are chasing each other at the end, and they go through the canals. Yeah. And is it the same place in Greece as well?
I was going to say, hold on a minute. That area was used in Greece, but no, I haven't been to LA as well.
You'll have seen it.
All over.
I'm sure it was in Chinatown and stuff as well.
Yeah,
that's it.
Which is a bit better than Greece. But there you go. Anyway,
another fun fact.
That's fun, folks. This chase sequence is still terrific.
Yeah, it's a fantastic scene. It's one of my favourite scenes in the film.
It's just the whole geography of it. Forget the geography of the city. It's the geography of everyone relative to each other. So you've got Arnie trying to catch up with John and try to take the T1000 out of play and everything else. They're both on bikes of different size and power, obviously. And he's in some big truck, which isn't really suited to where they're going.
And it's nice that they've given Arnie kind of an iconic weapon as well, with the lever actions of the shotgun that everyone's used to.
It sticks in your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah. Especially the way he reloads it by just
flipping it around. Yeah,
it's probably a lot more handy as well when you're on a bike.
It's just the timing as well, even where he shoots locks off things and stuff like that. You see that lock a split second before he shoots it, and then he's through it, and it's a very, very well edited scene. And because they're in action, John's mouth is shut, so it's even better. And obviously that bike is underpowered as well. That bike's underpowered as well, so it's quite tense from that thing because the truck's catching up with him and stuff like that. What were you going to say, Charlie?
I was just going to say my one issue in it, it's kind of just kind of a nitpick, is that big. And it's the difference between the first film where it's this kind of, it had that single-mindedness, but because this is Cameron in blockbuster mode, and obviously Arnie as well being a superstar, it's the heroic shot of him or his stunt double,
the jump where he jumps
off
down and it goes slow motion. I don't like that. That's very direct to video.
And I'm pretty sure that is one of the ones where now they've face replacement, because
that was the shot where you get a good long look at it, and I'm thinking that actually still looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking if they've done something with wires, no, they haven't. They've replaced the face. Yeah, fair enough. So we've got a 10-year-old being played by a 13-year-old probably during the time of filming.
Going, hello.
Yeah, but the action sequence itself is pretty good, and obviously we also see we obviously see the truck crash eventually because the tires have been blown out and stuff like that. It catches fire, and we actually see the full liquid metal reveal of him walk out from the flames. Now, apparently, that took something like a week in a computer. They just left a computer running for a week to get that. It was done on an Amiga, I believe. So yeah, that's really great. But of course, John's about to speak now, which isn't going to help.
Time out.
I hate this because it's like doing the heavy breathing, the shocked, and it's just like it's
okay. You're a Terminator, right?
I get that, yeah. And basically, Arnie explains to him that his model is obsolete; they're unlikely to be successful, and he has been there. And then comes out. I can't remember if he says it. No, he doesn't say it here. When he says, "Who sent you?" You did. That's a hint at what's coming later, which is the silliest decision that's ever been made in this series, apart from Genesis, all of it. But because we're later to find out that he has to follow John's every order. Why would you send a killing stroke protection machine, depending on how you utilize it, of course, trained to do all that, and say follow the guidance of a 10-year-old?
Because I'm sure like a great military leader would install those, like, okay, so make sure you don't kill any innocent civilians.
Yeah, but you can say all that before you send him.
Yeah, but exactly, that's what I mean. You think you think right, already pre-programmed, and
you're gonna
don't be afraid to give me like a little slap on the head if I'm being a twat.
He's 10, right? You won't understand this, but he's 10. Don't fucking traumatize him. Don't kill people. Just disable them. You know what I mean? But no, he has to get that from a 10-year-old. And if they're trying to shine you on, say this, and I hate that phrase. But anyway,
and if he ever tells you say like Alice Vista, no one ever fucking says it.
Don't say that. No one has ever said that except
literally except him.
Say it. Yeah. What was it he said? What was it he said? When someone's trying to shine you on, that was Hasta la Vista, wasn't it? Yeah.
Hasta la Vista, baby.
No problem.
Nobody says that. Who says that?
He was sat in the seat of the car like an asshole during that scene as well. It's just... But anyway, it's not quite...
Think about the first film, right? He actually sort of says someone says, fuck off, dickwad, or like... when he's in a hotel room.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be told, like... these stupid quotes from a kid.
Could have been worse. He could have been programmed by like Eon Productions or something. And if this happens, just say, "I fell into some deep water."
My tea is still dry.
Zoom's up.
And if you're caught this way, say, "Keeping the British end up, sir."
Yes. Because it had to be weird, too, sir.
If you're caught shagging, we appreciate that's unlikely. But
raise your eyebrow and say witty phrase.
Yeah. And if an old man says to you, "Well done, James," just ignore it. He's in the wrong series.
And then he says something that really confused me. Where he says, "Does it hurt when you get shot?" And he says, "Sensors reveal damage. Since the whatever."
They let him know that there's
the
like
sensors could be called pain, and it's like that's not an answer. Do you hurt
It
or
doesn't
not?
answer the question, does it? Yes or no? Come on.
In other words, no, you don't. But we're trying to humanise him.
It needs to be a cyberpunk binary, yes or no?
I'm presuming we must go to... what do we go to now? We must go to... Hang on a minute. His parents aren't killed yet.
Well, we go basically like to go from like him explaining stuff to like them calling the foster parents because he says, "Oh well, they're dicks, but I gotta warn them."
So it's now at night. They go onto the phone and ring home. This was the Wolfie reference from last week, actually.
Yeah.
Because their dog's actually called Max. That's what gives it away.
And then the director's cut has a really obvious scene where
he goes out.
He kills the dog
and sees it on the thing.
Yeah.
You didn't need that. But I can see why you film it. You're just giving yourself options, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
I can see why you film it, but you don't need it. Arnold saying your foster parents are dead. I mean, if you can follow a film, you should be able to follow. What's the dog called?
Yeah.
Wolfie. Max. Okay. Well, where's Wolfie? You should be able to follow that. Okay. But yeah, that's when we get the reveal, because he says he wants to go to his mother. He says no, and then he starts acting up, and the Terminator grabs him.
Yeah.
And then he screams for help, and two
This does not help our mission.
and two rejects from WWE come over.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that.
Yeah. One of whom was too fat to be like Patrick Swayze's stunt double.
Point Break.
Yeah, Point Break. Yeah. And
even what they're wearing is just so 1990, isn't it? It's just it's not quite 80s, but just before we kind of figured out to move on from that.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah. And that's where obviously we realise Arnie goes to shoot them. Did you call moi a dipshit?
What?
Yeah, I mean, this is it makes him instantly not likable because he's just on a power trip.
When he says moi, that really reminds me of Miss Piggy.
And these guys do not deserve. I mean, yes, they look like WWF rejects, but they are literally there just helping out a kid that was calling out for help.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he turns up,
he wants to humiliate them because he's got the power to do so.
Yeah.
But we do get the thing where he's about to shoot him and all the rest, and all the rest of it, and we already get this. No, you can't kill people. Why? And I remember Jonathan Ross had a chat show that used to go up against Wogan or something. It used to be half hour before or something, and they literally played this scene and just had a little counter with cash in the corner because they revealed what his salary was and how much that was a word. So he says, why? And $60,000 came up or something. And then he says something again and he says, why? And it doubles.
Every time he says one word, it goes up.
It goes up whatever it was, because he didn't have that many words. It's much more than the first film. But I
do actually have a fun fact about that coming
that's why
up.
I'm not saying the number. That's why I'm not saying the number, because I ruined that.
I tried to verify this on a few different sites.
I'll tell you at the time,
all different kind of figures.
When you tell us, I'll tell you what I thought it was.
Well, somewhere between X and Y. I'm going to tell you that.
Okay, fair enough. Well, it's definitely between X and Y, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it could be between X and Z, but it could be Y.
So they realise, so the foster parents are dead. The T-800 argues quite reasonably, he will definitely try to acquire you. He will kill you. He will kill your mother. What will happen to my mother? Will he kill her? And then acquire her form. And it's she's a priority to me. And again, then you get the bit we've just described, and he realizes he's in charge, so he can demand they go there, and that's where they head. Before all that, I think the next thing we see is Sarah. The timeline doesn't quite work out because it's only this place is not that far away. They've just got to head over there, but obviously quite a lot happens during that journey, and it's Sarah told that the foster parents are being killed and shown a photo of the T-800, and she's showing no reaction whatsoever.
He telling her she's going fuck.
Yeah, so she actually plays this very, very well, and she steals a paperclip. There's a paperclip, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she's basically taken back to her bedroom, her room. And I know that sounded dodgy, particularly if someone's about to lick her face.
This is one of the things I always think. How come like staff members in these kind of things are always the worst kind of people?
I mean,
in films,
he looks like the stereotype of a sex offender anyway.
Yeah,
it looks like it should be on Watchdog.
Yeah.
Have you seen this Pescadero State Hospital and the treatment of the patients?
Yeah. So she gets taken back to her room, and she is securely tied to her bed. That's why bedroom probably isn't appropriate terminology. But obviously she needs the paperclip to break out. She spat it in the right direction, didn't she? That could have gone wrong. She spat it to exactly the distance she needed to.
Of course she did.
But there you go. Anyway, so she breaks out, and effectively there's a few cuts here and there, but she breaks her way out. or she's breaking her way out anyway. She ends up with Silverman with a syringe in his neck full of like some industrial cleaner or something.
I think maybe because, and again, this is something that doesn't work as well as it could do because of the director's cut. But because in the director's cut we saw the guy beating the shit out of her, she kind of breaks
she hits
his
him
nose
with
and
she hits him with a half a broom handle basically.
Yeah.
In the theatrical cut, that's fucking disproportionate as hell.
Yeah.
But in the director's cut, it's like, they've kicked the shit out of her first, and I don't know about the face licking. I cannot remember if that's in theatrical or not.
I think that is in the theatrical.
I think it is, yeah.
Because I always thought that was like a weird beat that they decided to excise, but you might be right. Okay. Well, I suppose that makes him a creep. They've got to do something, I suppose, to justify it, so make him a creep. I don't know.
They always do that with like people who work in these places, aren't they? It's never it's always like either that or there's one really nice person and that's it. Everyone else is just a fucking arsehole.
It's like one from the Cuckoo's Nest, isn't it? It's kind of everyone's got to have a nurse Ratchet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great film.
Yeah,
such a classic film.
Starring Hong Kong Phooey.
Yeah.
I was talking about The Shining to someone the other day who was looking forward to Doctor Sleep, and they hadn't seen it for years. And I pointed out that was Hong Kong Phooey, and I've never seen anyone more impressed with anything I've ever said.
Mind blown.
They were just like, fucking wow. That's Hong Kong Phooey, Scatman Crowthers, yeah.
And Jazz in the Transformers.
Yeah. Who knew?
I knew.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Charlie, obviously. Charlie and Dave.
Hong Kong Phooey could beat the Transformers. Fuck off. I love Hong Kong Phooey as a younger adult, though. I'm not even as a kid. I had the video when I was in my early 20s. Anyway, go on.
And then she takes out Silverman.
Yeah, and the T-1000 is around because he's mimicked a kind of overweight security guard and stabbed him through the eye. Not for the last time in this film. They did that with twins. There were two guys.
There's two guys from Erie, Indiana.
They're also in Gremlins too.
Yeah, they are the two.
For a few years.
The two guys that make a Gizmo dance to the 50s.
I haven't seen it for so long. I remember really liking Gremlins too.
Oh yes, it's amazing.
Okay, yeah.
But they were also in.
I've seen the first one more often.
It was in Erie, Indiana. Do you remember Erie, Indiana?
Yeah.
Ooh.
That was a series. It was kind of an X-Files for kids.
Yeah, that's it. That was more kind of like a sci-fi series.
Joe Dante were involved, and there were these two twins who basically had lived for decades because their mother made them sleep in giant Tupperware containers.
Mm.
Oh, so they were fresh.
So they didn't age. And then when it was found out this was happening and they were slept in all beds, they became these two guys. These two twins.
It was very spooky.
Which are like kind of like the Hollywood twins, aren't they? They're in everything.
Oh god, yeah, they're everywhere.
Don Stanton and Dan Stanton.
Right, and they do really look alike. I know most twins do.
Yeah, they are
in that lighting, they're eerily alike.
Yeah.
You can tell who's who.
Yeah. Whereas actually Linda Hamilton and her twin are not as similar looking, but again, they get round it with like makeup and lighting and stuff.
Yeah.
They're similar, but you can quite easily tell them apart. Although Arnold didn't, because apparently he walked up to what he thought was Linda Hamilton and grabbed her ass playfully because they were friendly. Turned out to be her sister. But anyway, yes, he had to apologise for all that before he became governor. I'm sorry, I behaved like an irresponsible jackass with all those women by touching their bits. He didn't mention the maid at this point. So the T-1000 is on site as well, and the T-800 and John have just arrived, shooting the security guard in the leg carefully on the way through.
That's what he does. Makes him do the promise, isn't it?
Yes, he does. He promises just before they get there. Yes, like they get to the site and he does that, and then they sort of head in, sort of thing. Yeah. That's the person they encounter. Yeah. Raise your hand. Just trust me on this. Just like delivers all dialogue really bad. He's a 13-year-old boy, but it's just like it's a lot to anchor a film on, and he's not particularly likable 13-year-old boy either. But there you go. Yeah.
Plus, also getting a robot that has to obey your every command to raise its hand is kind of pointless. It's like, well, you just do it anyway.
Yeah, just do this, will you? You don't have to like do the swearing bit, but there you go. This is your order. But there you go. And it's quite nice actually when Sarah's like escaping, and then the elevator doors open, goes slow motion, and she just collapses to the floor. And upon seeing him, and starts trying to back up, and her legs won't work, and all that. That's all pretty effective.
Yeah.
The film is about to get less effective, but it's pretty good at this point.
Yes.
And he does say, "Come with me if you want to live." After sort of John effectively runs over and says, "Mom, it's not what you think." And with that, the T-1000 arrives and sort of melds through the sort of jail door.
Yeah, what's now a meme?
Yeah,
It has become a meme.
It's a meme with I've seen one with a cat. I've seen one with a little dog as well, like a little chihuahua type thing. It just Silverman like looks around, a cigarette drops out of his mouth, and a little chihuahua comes through the door. Nice little touch with the gun getting caught as well. But obviously, we're on again. We've got everybody assembled. I cannot remember where this would have been in the theatrical cut in terms of a time check. I think the problem is in the director's cut, we're getting towards an hour, so it's too long. You can see why they've had to make
trims. This should be a first act thing.
This is like exactly. This should. I don't know where it is in the theatrical cut, but we've already described quite a lot. I mean, the one thing we didn't take a lot of time describing is there's quite a lot more of Miles Bennett Dyson in the theater. In that cut as well, just seeing him with his family and all that kind of thing. We have seen him go in and have we seen him at this point go in and see the arm and the chip from the first Terminator?
Yeah.
It's all been established, but obviously he's not explained it verbally yet to Sarah. And there's just a bit of an action sequence to get her out of there, isn't there, more or less? Sort of shooting him through elevator doors and all that sort of thing, and him punching down through the elevator roof and cutting Sarah's arm or shoulder and that sort of thing. But they do get away. They get away in a police car.
Yeah, and then that's the last we see of T-1000 for about 40 odd minutes.
And we're into a really quite weak second act of this.
And it's kind of teased what he comes as before, because he sees the police guy on a bike, and he goes, "Hey, that's a nice bike."
I love that line. I just love the way
that's quite a cool line.
It's even the way. I mean, I don't know if Cameron will have thought about it this much, but say that's a nice bike. I mean, that it's not quite of its time. It's almost like he's trying to say something that approximates, and what he's sort of ended up doing is sort of getting something from you see, and it's more sort of 50s than it is 90s.
It's kind of like the T-1000's kind of like smiling to seem friendly, but it almost looks like he's about to joy. I'm about to joy to kill you now. That's kind of what it looks like.
He's about to rip your head off at the same time. You just think, oh.
But yeah, they head off down to. Firstly, Sarah has a go at John for basically breaking her out. It was tactically really stupid. You have got to be smarter than that. I think all of that as dialogue makes sense to me. The Terminator saying to him, "What's wrong with your eyes?" because he's crying slightly.
Why'd you cry?
Shouldn't he know? He should know what tears are.
Yeah, he's
given he has tear ducts, and he would have been programmed with a full knowledge of human anatomy.
Yeah.
Well, apart from that, clearly,
because he says I have detailed files.
Yeah. But if you're watching a sad film, I won't know what that is that's happening to your eyes. But again, it's meant to rhyme with something later in the film, but it's shit.
I know.
It's rubbish.
So, there's a bit of exposition now. He explains that he explains the timeline to 1997, when basically all this software will come online, become. He says that they will take humans out of the decision-making process in defense because it's quicker and all the rest of it. And they will put this thing online. It starts learning at what he describes as a geometric rate.
Yes.
And becomes self-aware at, and he says a time, I can't remember, 3 a.m.
2:14 a.m. Eastern Time,
I knew it was early hours of the morning. I knew it was the early hours of the morning. In panic, they try and shut it down, and it fires on Russia in order to get Russia to retaliate to kill the thing trying to shut it down. And that's what happens, basically. And he's asked about it, and he says the man most directly responsible is Miles Bennett Dyson, who designed this learning computer. And so that is obviously what's going to be coming later, but not straight away. They head to this bit in Mexico I fucking hate. And I don't know why I hate it so much. I don't know. I think some of it is Sarah being one-dimensional. I think part of it is it's killing momentum.
Yeah, I think that's it. And it's making these kind of ham-fisted observations like that. Are we going to make it as a species?
Yeah. It's a moralizing film, and I don't
it's
like
in your nature to destroy yourselves with the two kids with the guns. And
it's quite a bleak worldview, isn't it?
It's a bit on the nose as well. I mean, kids waving guns around, and at the same time, I mean, there's some funny bits like calling Uncle Bob and stuff like that. But also with the weapons, again, they find the weapons, and it's all like he grins, and I always hated that because I thought, you've cut that shot for a trailer. You've not cut it for a cohesive film. Of course, they had cut it for a complete cohesive film, but we didn't know that till we watched the director's cut.
Yeah.
Where in the director's cut, they're saying about you've got to listen to how people talk and all the rest of it. But I think it's during that very same conversation, it's like, I can learn. I think he says he lasts 120 years or something like that, and he can learn. But there's an inhibitor in his neural net or whatever they call it in this film that they need to take out. In the director's cut, there's quite a clever effect where they have, I think, an animatronic sat opposite Arnie, and Linda Hamilton's sister stood opposite her, mimicking a mirror, while they cut into the animatronic's head and take out this chip, and therefore at this point you can learn. But in the director's cut, where you see this, Linda Hamilton immediately goes to destroy the chip. And it's like, that makes no fucking sense at all. He's just saved your life when he could have killed you. And it's like, well, we've got to end this here. And it's like, but there's another Terminator out there that you cannot do anything about without this guy. So you're not ending anything. Miles Bennett Dyson is still doing what he's doing, although I'm presuming you're going to go and kill him now, which obviously she does to go to try, which doesn't make any fucking sense to me either. And it's just Sarah becomes an asshole in this part of the film. Suddenly she's in a hotter climate, so they've got her in this fucking camo bloody wife beater with the glasses on. And it's just like, what a cliche this woman is, and her brain drops into her fucking ass. It's ridiculous. She's immediately going to destroy the only thing that can protect her. When he's under John's orders, John can order this thing to fucking kill itself if he wants at the end.
She's probably seeing it as like, I just don't trust them. I just don't trust machines. It's better to get rid of it. I mean, like, before that, she is like just making like sort of snarky comments that sort of like, oh, do these things like about the bullet wounds, because like, you know, because like, you know, good to us if you don't pass as human. Do you know what I mean? She's very like,
she's very clinical.
She's very dismissive of it. It's like always like fucking robots.
But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, I'm sure I could have a 10-minute conversation with James Cameron where he would convince me this makes some kind of sense. If it's trusting to have these things around full stop because of where it leads, then all right, I get the point. But if it's trust that you need this creature right now, you need this thing. So it never made any sense, and we won't spend much longer on it because it's in a version of the film some people won't have seen. But that's what allows all this smiling and learning and saying stupid lines that follows.
Yeah.
And it leaves us with no perfect cut of the film because he grins several fucking times.
I mean, again, I am going off a TV cut here, but like, you know, I do remember it does cut. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am. Because it is.
But even at the end, I know now why you cry. Well, that's a learning thing. So you need the director's cut thing you cut. Unless you take it as read, this thing can learn, in which case, why did you even fucking film that?
Because
it doesn't make any sense.
Because I'm sure in the original cut that he does establish that he's a learning computer. So the more I experience, the more I learn. And then they just cut away. They don't have the whole scene with Sarah Connor with the chip and that.
Yeah. Maybe it is cohesive. All I remember is, with knowledge of the director's cut, when I go to the theatrical, I can see the bits that are missing, and it seems to have a knock-on effect. What I haven't done is really watch the theatrical cut for years without thinking of the director's cut at all, and seen if these things actually do pay off stuff that you can at least infer from what is there. So I don't know, but I was never very comfortable with the silly lines and the grins.
Yeah. Because I'm sure before that, Arnie's doing learning stuff like sort of mildly kind of like charismatic kind of things.
Yeah.
There's slight little things like, would the Terminator make like a quip about like, you'll live, like kind of thing? I don't know.
And I would think they're infiltration machines. I would just think if you could watch someone smile, you could copy it. Your eyes might be a bit dull. It might not be the most convincing thing in the world, but you can turn the fucking corners of your mouth up, I would have thought. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
So I struggled with all this, and I'm struggling with this section of the film because it's the moralizing section of the film about it's in your nature to destroy yourself and all this bollocks, and trying to find some kind of like kernel of hope for humanity. And I'm thinking, well, if you want to find a kernel of hope for humanity, or a moralistic approach to this sort of filmmaking, Avatar's the right place to be doing it, not here. That's where you want to do all your heavy-handed messages about the way we live, not in a Terminator film. And of course, Sarah then reflects on the T-800 being a father figure.
Yeah.
In like a voiceover, and she'll never leave it. And I'm thinking, again, there's another cut of this film where you nearly destroyed it moments ago, but there you go. It's quite nicely shot, and Linda Hamilton's got quite a nice voice. She's quite good for like voiceover and all that, so it's okay. But what did you make of this act of the film, Sarah? Because we're
Sarah?
Sarah. Becca.
Who's that?
I've only been watching.
Yeah, no, she does become a bit of an arse. But yeah, I just kind of found. Also, when I saw it at the cinema, the bit with Miles Dyson, who should have invented the Hoover. I just kind of felt I was like, I don't remember this section of the film dragging so badly. But no, I sort of agree with it. It's just she does become a bit of a ass, just to agree with you guys. And it's just this complete sort of flip, and it really kind of took me out of the film. Actually, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And of course, she then has this nightmare, which is again no perfect cut of the film, but this is the right place to have the flash forward. This is the right place, not following Kyle out the door. But again, you give yourself choices. I understand that. And she falls asleep and sees the nuclear bomb, effectively. And then she wakes up. Notice she's carved words perfectly into the table that say "no fate," because she clearly needed a reminder. And then disappears. And she goes off to assassinate Dyson, basically, because she thinks this will just stop everything. And John divines all of this from reading "No Fate" on the table.
Yeah, which is a complete retcon where he lies about, well, it was not said at all in the original film. It's made
it was all, thank you for your service, you have to be strong.
He does say the future is not set.
Yeah, but he doesn't add the "no fate" for
But he doesn't do the "no fate," but what we make.
It's probably because it would have taken ages for her to carve into the table, the future is not set. That's what it is. Doing that in your sleep's a tough ask.
LOL. Just doing text speak and a big grumpy face.
Yeah.
I think one thing with all the stuff like the CGI in this film, I think the nuclear fire dream sequence is really well done from an effects point of view, and the way everything just tears. It doesn't explode; it just kind of tears from the force of the wave.
There's a blast, but it's like a shockwave.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really well done. The fact that this is all done with models as well. So I think it's a really nice touch.
Although I was surprised that I didn't see a dog immolated while it was pissing against the lamppost, and then I realised that was Batman and Robin, and it froze. So yeah, from the words "no fate," they were like, right, she's off to kill Miles Bennett Dyson. Let's go there, which is just exceptional. That's up there with Robin at the start of fucking the Batman '66 film, where he got Catwoman from it happening at sea. Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, she's there basically shooting. I don't know where I am with this as a character. She's not mad, because obviously she was in there for she's criminal, but she's not mad. I'm not convinced she would shoot this guy. Are you?
Well, she does go to, but then she kind of,
can't do it because of the kid.
Or there is a sense, there is a tremble there where she's kind of like pent up, but kind of like resisting it somewhat. By the time she's there, she's almost like kind of trying to psych herself up to do it.
And she does. Mind you, she goes to do it again. She gets in. She does start firing, and it's only she does fire. He's only not killed because the kid drives the remote control into his leg, and he bends down.
Yeah.
And then she gets into the house and tries to get the kid to get out of the way. She's going to do this.
It's kind of interesting that she changes her mission, as it were, from preparing John and needing to prepare him to stopping it altogether.
Yeah. And it's like, you've had years to think about that supposed no fate message in the timeline of this film.
Yeah.
And it's only like one bad dream in Mexico, and you've decided that's what you're going to do. Whether it's because you've only just been given the name Miles Bennett Dyson, I don't know, but you must have always known someone was responsible. But anyway, and in fact, you did try to blow up Cyberdyne, to be fair.
Yeah.
But
it's probably a heightened sort of like shit. We'll put in they're like sort of advanced Terminator. And I've got to protect my son.
I do think it's modelled, though. I do think this section of the film is modelled on who and what Sarah is. It's filled with a lot of exposition. It's filled with a shit ton of moralizing. It's filled with too much of John fucking Connor's mouth moving. And I just think this part of the film is a bit of a betrayal of the first one. I mean, obviously, the T-800 and John turn up and basically stop her and all the rest of it, and then Arnie rips the skin off one of his arms to show what he is, and then sits and explains the story to Dyson. We just see a visual representation of that while Sarah just sits there smoking again and voicing over it, sitting there like a badass.
Yeah, and then going, "You men never think."
Yeah, she has a bit of a sexist rant, doesn't she? Or kind of like.
I do like the bit when Arnie rips his skin off, though. That's quite good.
That's a good effect. In fact, when you go and look a GIF up of it, the GIF is actually almost recreated. There's like a floating arm in front of it. It's not that. In the actual film, it looks connected to him. It's good.
Yeah, and there's a shot of Dyson and his wife through the
grill of it, if you like.
Yeah. Which is really
that was really painful. Oh my gosh!
And also that scene has a nicer touch for John when he kind of goes to the kid. Hey, do you want to show me my room? Before let's Slee on. I'm just going to take you away before you see something that's horrific.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm not sure how bad it's going to look either. Let's get out of here.
But then it's the bit where he says, "Now listen to me very carefully. I shall say this only once."
This only once.
You cannot hear that without thinking that, can you?
No.
That's what I thought.
Film.
Renee.
Who is it? Is it? I'm sure. Allo Allo. I just says it's only words with them. A just French accent that I can't do.
It's an 80s largely, although it ran into the early 90s. It's an 80s BBC sitcom set with the French resistance in a cafe during World War II. But it's really carry-on sort of characterization.
Everyone does fake French accents.
And everyone does fake French accents, except the British policeman who is trying to speak. That's meant to be French. So when he's speaking French, it's English, but with all the words kind of...
It comes out wrong. So instead of good morning, he famously goes good morning.
It's funny once, but every episode's the same. Right?
He mispronounces words wrongly, and it's hilarious.
There's nice Nazis.
There's nice Nazis.
Yeah, that's the one.
You got a nice camp one.
And the rotund, balding owner of the cafe is an absolute sex magnet to everyone.
Everyone loves him. It's amazing.
Yeah.
He's having
That's
affairs with
recently.
like everyone except like his wife.
Except his wife.
And it's yeah. And to think that's the main character, that's the guy who we're like kind of following, and we're supposed to go, oh yeah, this is funny. Like, no.
You're fucking everybody. The fact that it's just a whore Renee and a cuddle, we know what that's representing. So anyway, hello, folks.
If you haven't seen it, check it out.
Yeah, didn't think that would come up tonight.
No, that's as random as they get.
So they agree that they need to actually get into Cyberdyne and destroy what's there, or the research, the arm, the chip, everything. He explains he didn't know what it was. It was smashed. It didn't work, but it sped us forward. So now they've got to go and basically break in, haven't they, to Cyberdyne?
Yeah.
And this seems to go on forever. This scene is really long.
Yeah.
Is it just me?
No, well, because we still haven't been back with the T-1000 yet, who is the
That's
threat
what
of the
it is.
film.
This is busy work, yeah.
You know, bear in mind, T-1000 is probably one of the key and most great assets of the film. It's like really, whenever he's on screen, I mean, he's very impactful because he's a genuine scary threat. It's like, oh my god, like he can come up from the floor and take your form and do whatever. He can get any, he's generally scary, and he's absent for like a large chunk of the film. And
he only comes back here because there's police alerts.
Yeah.
And he's got, like, obviously access to all that stuff because he's undercover as a cop.
Yeah.
Not an undercover cop, though. An overcover cop.
Yes.
Or, as we like to call them, a cop. I've overthought that, haven't I?
Just a little bit.
Fair enough. This goes on forever. And again, it's lots of, like, John being smart as fuck and breaking in himself and all that kind of shit. But I don't know what I want to say about this. We've got the I'll be back line.
Which is very... It feels very much like on its last legs at this point when Arnie says it. He's very much like, yeah, I'll be back. And I think the next time he says it...
And immediately an animatronic version of him gets shot repeatedly in the face. That is an effect that hasn't stood up, but it's not terrible.
No, that's one of the few that you're kind of watching and you think, oh, a bit faked, but generally it looks good.
And it's very quick cuts as well, so it's all right. So the T-1000 is there now. The police break in. There's a load of shooting. Dyson gets shot, and he's holding basically the trigger to detonate because they've just wired the building to blow up.
You can tell he's about to get shot because everything goes slow motion.
Yeah, he acts it pretty well, actually. His breathing slowed down. This actor has been in loads of stuff. What's he called?
Joe.
Joe Morton.
Joe Morton.
Joe Morton.
It was really bizarre in the Godzilla film this year. He turned up in one scene, very, very briefly, barely said anything, and disappeared again. And it was meant to be a reference back to the last film, but no one can fucking remember the character.
No, he does pop up in these kind of almost cameo sort of roles. Like he's instantly recognisable. He isn't, a character actor, but he's on screen for 5 seconds.
He's a big enough actor that it's like he's got to be there for a reason, and there wasn't one. But anyway, he was also Cyborg's father in Batman and Superman and Justice League and that shit. Yeah,
the police chief
in
Speed, yes, police chief in Speed.
Yeah. This is the first thing I think of him in, though. This is I associate him with most. And actually, I can't remember him in Speed. I saw it. I've seen Speed more than once, but I haven't seen it for so long I've forgotten it, to be honest. So, I don't know. I'm looking through to see if there's anything else I really remember him from, and it's lots of little things. It's like, I might have seen a bit of that. I'm not sure. He was in Paycheck. That was a great film, Paycheck.
Of Mice and Men? He's in that.
He is,
John
that's
Malkovich
true.
One.
Oh,
That's a good film.
I mentioned the Stone Cold
really
Classic, and you bring that up.
I only
never
really
seen
noticed
it.
I did it for GCSE English, so.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, okay, I've never read it. We didn't cover it. I mean, I went through to A-level with English, but we never covered it.
No, this English changes all the time.
It's good.
He was an American gangster.
Also, no, that's a good film.
I liked American Gangster. It's a little bit too long, but I liked it.
He's in Who's the Boss?
Oh,
I've
really?
seen that.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm excited by that. particularly as I can't even be bothered to watch Cheers to see if Ted Danson fell off a chair. And like, I actually quite like
I still
that.
need to see The Good Place. Does he fall off a chair in that? I don't know.
Oh,
He was actually in X-Files
yeah.
He was. That's true, actually. Yes.
in the
I was actually
episode
just
Red Room.
having a quick.
We're also on to trying to work out if Boris Becker ever fell off a chair. To be fair,
Hey, Boris, let us know.
Our format's maturing. Anyway, so yeah, they do get out. Dyson dies. The whole thing blows up, and now the T-1000 is right after them. It starts off in a helicopter, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the TV spot that drew me to the cinema in the first place.
Yeah, that's the bit where he kind of goes in on his bike and then sort of flies out and then goes through head first and he mimics the Arnie line in the.
Oh, where he freezes.
Just get out.
Yeah. The director's cut has some stuff I would have just liked to have seen a bit of once they get to that foundry, because he starts glitching.
Yeah.
After he sort of reforms, because they say he's a prototype, he's not meant to be perfect, and he starts glitching after having been shattered. So you get him putting his hand on like a rail, and his arm will slightly elongate and take the colour of the rail.
Yeah.
And like his feet are getting caught and things like that. And later, when he mimics Sarah, his feet are like turning almost into the grill he stood on. All of that is excised from the theatrical cut. I'm not sure about. I mean, the action's all right, and Arnie's obviously starting to take a hammering now. I like the actual effect of his damage makeup in the first film better, but it's okay. But there are things that don't make sense. Like he gets Sarah at one point, stabs her through the shoulder, and says, "Call to John." And I'm thinking, turn into her and call to John yourself. What's the fucking problem? So some of it isn't that well thought through.
And then he eventually does.
Yeah. The action's all right here. I don't know that I've got an awful lot to say about it, to be honest. We skipped over the fact that basically he
kills the child.
He crashed. He crashed it with a load of like liquid nitrogen or whatever it was and froze, and that was he was shot, and that's the Hasta La Vista line. That's the Hasta La Vista line.
Because it is basically just by this point we get to a big chase like the first one. It was all just like one big chase where they.
Yeah, it's very similar. I haven't got an awful lot to say about it. I do remember them sort of, the helicopter and then the tanker truck and all the rest of it. And it was the tanker that is liquid nitrogen. And they're driving some real knackered old thing as well that he's catching up with them quite easily. So it's pretty cool. It's fairly intense. And he's very good at putting sort of mismatched vehicles together so that, the one being chased is in real visceral danger and things like that. At one point, the T-1000 appears to have killed the T-800. He stabbed him right through his fuel cells and all the rest of it. But he's got battery backup.
He somehow finds it.
Yeah.
And he finds it even though he's switched off.
Yeah.
John is called to the two Sarahs, one of whom's obviously Linda Hamilton's twin sister. And then we've whipped through Act 3, which isn't bad, to be honest, but it is just, effectively Arnie appears out of nowhere and shoots him and he falls into, like, molten...
In terrible slow motion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a slightly ropey effect, actually. We got anything else we want to say about this act of the film? I mean, it's pretty propulsive. It's decent.
Other than the fact that, what if, he could have easily not fallen off.
He could have fallen the other way.
Yeah, or could not fallen off at all because he wasn't that far away from the edge anyway.
Have these people never seen the end credits of like Wurzel Gummidge? you don't know.
When that comes out, when the new series of that comes out, we're going to have to do a commentary on it or something.
It's on TV though, isn't it?
Well, I know, but still, we'll have to take a break from movies and
it's Mackenzie Crook. But if you want me to commentate on the episode,
we'll have to do like a mini review or something, won't we? So
when I was a kid, they were filming in Brixham, which is East Devon.
Oh,
because they did like a
summer holiday there as well.
There was a summer special. Too. Yeah.
How about that?
So Gummidge, and he was there, and I was about 2.
Wow.
So I was there when they were filming it. So yeah, we could commentate on that if you want. But the point is, at the end, he would get on like his cross or whatever they call it, and you didn't know which way he was going to fall. And it was always the surprise at the end. Which way was he going to fall?
Left or right?
Terminator could have fallen the other way.
Could have fallen up, could have fallen down.
Do we have to explain Wurzel Gummidge in the same depth as we explained Allo Allo now?
Wurzel Gummidge scared the shit out of me.
Wurzel Gummidge was
Terrifying.
70s and early 80s. I had the album when I was 3.
Wow.
He
loved
did
it.
he did the hit single, A Cup of Tea and a Slice of Cake, right?
Come to this cake, can't I?
Yeah, he was basically a scarecrow that was like sentient and came to life when no one was around, a bit Toy Story style. And he was in love with Aunt Sally, who was played by Una Stubbs, who is in BBC's Sherlock. I'm thinking of our audience listening to this. She's the housekeeper. And he was played by John Pertwee, who was the third Doctor. And he was also the father of Sean Pertwee, who you'll have all seen in loads of stuff in minor roles. And but he used to, at the end he used to walk down the field in 10 Acre Field, I think it was called, and get on the thing, and then you didn't know which way he was going to fall. Which is something I think James Cameron should have researched before he.
No, I remember like a harvester used to have like a sort of animatronic style dummy, and that used to terrify me. So I screamed the place down and got my parents to switch it off, and that's my abiding memory of Wurzel Gummidge.
I'm a bit concerned though that if I write to James Cameron now and take him to task over this, firstly, the film's 28 years old, and secondly, you'll be, who the fuck's Wurzel Gummidge?
You'll be like, who the bloody hell? It was a shite.
You want me to research a TV? Oh, it also there were 2 kids in it. There were like a boy and a girl, and the girl was Charlotte Coleman, who went on to be Marmalade Atkins on TV, but she was also Hugh Grant's sister in 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Oh, never knew that.
She died at the age of 33 from a massive asthma attack. She was what was the character called? Scarlett or something like that. Hugh Grant's sister in 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Charlotte Coleman. She was one of the kids in Wurzel Gummidge.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, there you go. And she was also in Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. That's where she made her name as well.
There you go. That was a detour, wasn't it?
There you go.
Detour and a half.
So
you learn a lot by listening to this show.
So that's the second time in this podcast we've mentioned Wurzel Gummidge.
Yeah.
So in
summary, had James Cameron watched that, he'd have designed this scene better. Mind you, if he'd watched Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, he'd have probably just stuck a load of lesbianism in it. So it does depend what your research is. I'd have been fine with either. So he falls into the vat, which is obviously they basically had a chase to the one place that you can melt these things. They didn't end up fighting in the back of an Iceland.
Wait, it's convenient, isn't it? Really, isn't it? Well,
yeah. You know, Dixon's or W.H. Smith. No,
it's like it should have been a line of dialogue saying like, "Oh, I wonder how can we destroy these things?" And look up at a sign saying "melting."
Yeah, you do realise I've got to post a cup of tea and a slice of cake to our Facebook page now.
Yes.
Anyway, right? Yeah. So this is where we get all really fucking heavy-handed, don't we? With their final conversations. Thoughts, Charlie?
It's the I need a vacation.
I hated that line.
That
should not be in the theatrical cut.
That should not be any cut of any film ever.
Actually, even with a learning computer, it's why are you saying that?
Yeah, that just completely breaks any suspension of disbelief about a murderous robotic cycle from the future. And it's just and then the whole thing of I know now why you cry. Because my learning computer has not worked.
Yeah.
That it is something I can never do.
And it's just, he goes all whiny as well, the kid. And he's only doing what he's told to do. And he's meant to be emotional. And he is 13. But it's like, it'll be okay. It's just like, that's the performance you get from a child. I'm not, he might not have grown into the nicest human being, but at this age, it's like, I wouldn't have expected anything better from him, really. And it's all a bit histrionic. And I sense when I look at Linda Hamilton, she doesn't know how to play this scene. It's not that she can't act. It's like I don't think she actually really quite is sure how you are meant to play this where she is at this point on what's happening.
Yeah,
so she plays it rather blank.
It kind of works as a kind of begrudging kind of handshake, kind of respect kind of thing. in that way.
That
But
bit,
it's
like
just-
the last look they have at each other, her and the T800, I quite like. It
Yeah.
must be clear from the last couple of weeks I've got quite a lot of regard for Linda Hamilton's talents, and I wish she'd been in a lot more, generally, because the
Yeah.
only other thing I really know her from, apart from cameos in things like Frasier, is she was in a TV series with Ron Perlman called Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah,
In
she was
the
in
80s.
King Kong Lives,
I've not
which
seen
was the sequel to the 1976 remake of
that.
King
I've seen
Kong,
that. I've seen that.
where they gave King Kong a artificial heart transplant.
Okay. That must have been one big heart.
Yeah, the opening sequence is basically them doing this operation, and with this massive robot, this massive electronic heart, and lowering it down with a crane into King Kong's body. She was in Dante's Peak with
Oh,
Pierce.
Pierce.
Oh, of course she was.
Which
Which
Yeah.
I've
is-
never seen.
No, I haven't either.
I've never seen, and the thing is, I think that might be a '96 film, so I think he might already have been Bond by then.
He was,
Yeah.
yeah. It was just
But
like
Yeah, it
his-
was very much at the start of
He
his
couldn't,
Bond career.
at that point, he couldn't quite, in my mind, shake the stink of being a B movie actor.
Yeah,
In that, like, Dante's Peak came out, and I just went, that'll be like barely better than direct to video, because it's like Lawnmower Man. Whereas with a couple more years of Bond, he was able to do Thomas Crown Affair and Taylor of Panama and stuff like that. So I think which were good films, and I liked him
Started to
in
get
them.
more pigeonholed into spy
I'm not
wars.
a great fan of his, as we know, but I really as Bond. But I liked him. I really loved him in the Taylor of Panama. That's
such a great film.
and I like him in Thomas Crown Affair as well. So he's pretty good. But like back in '96, that was I'm not that bothered about that one, and I'm never sure about disaster films either. It depends who makes them, because
yeah.
quite often they're terrible. So I've never seen it, but yeah, now you mention it, I remember she was in it, but I think I've always replaced her in my mind with someone like Julianne Moore was in it or something like that. You're right, it was Linda Hamilton. But this whole sequence, what did you guys make of it?
just cheesy. It's just stereotypical sort of, melodramatic sort of like, don't go, Shane, don't go, that kind of thing.
Cringe.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, when I first watched it, it was switched off as soon as T1000 died. I was like, right, film over. That was my first viewing experience. So it's only so I haven't really got much more to say really, because it's just like the film is just wrapping up, and it's just like, yeah, okay, let's just get the soppy stuff out of the way, get into the thumbs up, even though surely everything's destroyed beyond that. But yeah.
Yeah, again, it's all just, it is very cheesy, but yeah, the kind of end sequence is probably one of the most like iconic and sort of like fight sequences, especially within the series as well. Yeah, kind of very cheesy, very 90s, very sort of like 90s retro special effects as well. So
I do think the whole thumbs up, I need a vacation, all of that is just coming back to the point. There's no perfect cut of this film.
Yeah.
And it compromises the film, and it doesn't know whether it wants to be the tough, gritty makeup, follow up to the first film. It definitely doesn't want to be that. It wants to be something a bit more mass appeal and all the rest of it. But it doesn't know whether it wants to maintain an air of that, or whether it wants to put some of the silly comedy in that we go far worse with in future weeks, where it's not James Cameron. I'm thinking next week particularly.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like the last thing she says, which is, if a Terminator can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too.
Yeah, even on first viewing.
Oh god, yeah, I remember.
Even on first viewing, where I loved the film, it blew me away, but I actually wanted to fucking throw something at the screen at that line. I've always hated that line, even as a teenager, particularly as a teenager, actually, because as a teenager, you're probably a bit more pretentious, because you're just getting into film and stuff.
Yeah.
And to have such a
I think it's
cringe-makingly cheesy line, I was furious. Let's just do some final thoughts then, because we are where we are. And I don't really want to add a massive amount. I just want to say what's been clear all the way through. I'll say it one last time. There's no perfect cut of the film. There's a lot of weight put on the shoulders of a young actor who's not a particularly likable character and doing okay relative to his age, but the character's obnoxious, his voice is obnoxious, his dress is obnoxious, and the lines they give him is obnoxious. The T-1000 is superb and a real natural sort of move on from where we were last time. I think Arnie's terrific in it. I've got an awful lot more respect for him than I ever had around the era these films were released. Lyndall Hamilton's doing great work, but she's doing great work in what is, I'm going to use the word Charlie hates again, an overrated take on the character. In that, again, in public consciousness, when I talk about terms like that, I'm talking about what consensus tends to be. And the consensus is that they beefed the character up and made her stronger in everything else. And actually, I think you stripped a great deal of the humanity and nuance out of her. And I don't see this as a natural end point of where the character was last time. So I don't enjoy that as much. The film has a terrific Act 1. It has one of the best prologues, I think, in cinema history, nearly as good as Rocky 3. And for a less silly example, although I mean it actually, I think Rocky 3 has an incredible first 4 or 5 minutes to just set a scene. But think Fellowship of the Ring. That sort of 6 or 7 minutes that told you every fucking thing you needed to know. Well, this film did that in about a minute and a half. So I was really, really impressed by that. It looks great. It sounds great. It finishes well. It starts well. It's that middle act. It's the conception of Sarah. It's too much of that boy. It's the moralizing. And it's
too much of that boy.
And it's that middle act. And it's that middle act that's fucking baggy and doesn't know whether it wants to stop and moralize at us, stop and tell us a story, or
Excuse me, sorry.
what. And really, that's all I've got to say on it. It's a step down from last week, but it is about as good as you're ever going to do with a sequel to this stuff, as we've been seeing for years since.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you said, Dave, really. I haven't got much more to add, of the fact that it is Arnie at his peak, and I think, obviously, the stuff with the T-1000, it's got really good concepts and really good sort of special effects and sort of in terms of how it's been visualized. But it's just the middle act just kills it for me. And yes, you kind of cringe through the moralizing aspect of it. It comes across as a bit too a Saturday morning cartoon. But very heavy-handed. But there we are. It's not the first film, but what is?
The first film is.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I'm surprised you didn't spot that.
I don't really care. I mean,
good night, folks.
It definitely has strengths, but there's just a lot running through it that just makes me feel like I just don't care about the whole thing. And it's just kind of, it's like remaking the first film as a blockbuster, but the whole kind of genius of the first film that it wasn't a blockbuster, that because it was a kind of low budget kind of almost cyberpunk kind of film, it had that nihilism, like you said, that intensity that it had all the way through the film, and you were just on a knife edge all the way through. And because so much of this film drags as well, and there's the kind of comedy sections, and John Connor's just terribly written and terribly acted, and the T-1000s are really good, but even that, he never really gets a chance to really do a lot, because the shine is, the focus is always on always on Arnie. To be Arnie, and it just kind of, I just bored by it, and I'm astonished that anyone would think this is anywhere near the first film.
Shinier. It's shinier, and it's a peak Arnold Schwarzenegger. Not a better Arnold Schwarzenegger, but the star power coming off the man at this point is incredible. Do you think Cameron would have made a better film if he'd watched Renee and Allo Allo cop off with some waitresses?
He would have made a better film if he watched Wurzel Gummidge.
Well, we've established that. But I'm just wondering what he could learn from nice Nazis and a really, sexy waiter. But anyway, what do you think, Becca? On this, I mean, not Allo Allo and...
I quite enjoyed Allo Allo.
Yeah. That would be a bizarre
Oh,
show.
it
That would, every
was a show.
podcast would be exactly the fucking same.
The
Honestly,
T1000 with the 3 boobies.
All of Madonna with the missing boobies.
with the big
Or should that be next week?
If the Nazis can learn to love and understand humanity, then maybe we can
Maybe
too.
too. Yeah.
If maybe a womanizing French cafe owner can.
Perhaps Rene was so popular with the ladies because he had like he was made of liquid metal. He could make his knob bigger on demand. Although, why would you choose that form generally? But anyway, Becca,
I was just trying to look at the actress's name, but I can't remember her name.
which one?
Gordon Kay.
I'll tell you in a minute. Vicky Michelle, that was it.
Vicky Michelle. There was quite a
This is
cute
only
one in
went-
the
Well, there
earliest.
was Vicky
there was-
Michelle.
I
and
think
there
I
was
called her
Sue
something
Hodge
else.
as well.
but
There
never
was,
mind.
but Sue Hodge was a replacement for Francesca something or other. Basically,
Yeah.
someone who was in the earlier series was really
Yeah.
cute. And she was really short as well. She had to stand on a chair to kiss him.
Yeah, she was tiny.
I can't remember which one that was.
Well, there
was
because
a
Mimi
little blonde
tiny as
one, wasn't
well,
there?
she?
Yeah, Mimi
Yeah,
was,
that was-
but Mimi was a
Mimi was
replacement
blonde,
for
yeah.
somebody else. I'll go to like second series or something. I'm on IMDb looking up Hello. I did
Yeah.
not expect this tonight. Anyway, Becca, while I look up,
I used to
Hello,
think it was
do you want to like talk about
the lady who was married to Peter Davison, but no, it obviously wasn't.
The answer to that is no, she doesn't. She'd rather talk about Hello.
Anyway,
I'm looking at an episode because I was trying to find an episode she was in, and the first episode I've gone to, the episode title is 6 Big Boobies.
oh god,
Right, Becca, thoughts
that's what
on
to say for
the film
later on.
in your own time.
Oh dear. But yeah, no, it's one of those sequels that's iconic. Really, I mean, I kind of would agree with the points that you made earlier, David. It is quite saggy. Suffers from a saggy bum, saggy third act. And Hamilton, they seem to kind of do a complete sort of flip of her character. I find it quite jarring, unfortunately. Interesting point about how it would affect her, her mental health as well. Especially for obviously now it's something that's becoming more known and more widely talked about. It's quite a very bold choice for this film to make. I don't know. I sort of overlooked, not Edward Snowden.
To be honest, I haven't
Snowden.
thought about Edward Snowden tonight at all. So,
Well, there you are. That's the obligatory mention. Yeah, I sort of overlooked Edward Furlong. But that's an interesting point also that you made earlier, sorry, about Arnie not blinking. So when this new film comes out, I shall be on him like a hawk and say, right, Arnie, do not blink. But then anytime you blink, that could always be undone by computer graphics. So we'll see how it goes. But I think the first film is definitely much tighter, much more in terms of the script and characters as well. It's a lot more consistent. Graphics, both films I think largely hold up. There's probably one or two effects near the end of the film, end of this film even, that have dated unfortunately. But that's kind of how it goes. But otherwise, it looks fantastic. The whole look and feel of this film is really fantastic. I think I enjoyed it more than, well, certainly with Charlie as well, and I agree in the music as well also, and certainly the difference in the score between the themes for Arnie and also for Allo 1000 as well, and both kind of sort of really emphasise the character as a score is meant to do. The score for Allo 1000 is kind of very unrelenting, very kind of not monotonous, but similar sort of sound to it. He's sort of hammering the point home that he's just an unstoppable killing machine, obviously, until he's doused at the end in the molten steel. But yeah, I have a lot of love for this film still, but I just prefer the first film.
yeah, I think we all agree with that. I mean, there's only one thing that they could have really have changed that would have got it anywhere near the first film, and to be honest, but James Cameron, don't listen to us.
Well, you never know. There is hope for us yet. I'm still
Why?
convinced that we'll have these celebrity listeners, but it's never going to happen. But you never know.
Celebrity listeners.
I'll hold
Well,
out
we've
hope.
got Samuel L. Jackson, the Queen, Riddick Bowe, the Force Ghost of Ronnie Corbett, Michael Aspel, Queen
Listening from
Latifah.
beyond the grave.
I can't remember who else was in that room, but there's a lot of them. So there.
Well, didn't you tweet the Pope and somebody else?
I did
Who
tweet
you
the Pope. Well, I wanted to know if
The Pope and NASA, that was it.
the Pope and NASA. A couple of years ago, when we were trying to find out about Ted Danson, I also tweeted Robert Davi and Gok Wan. Robert Davi replied.
Oh, I didn't see that.
He did. He said there's a conspiracy to keep all these things secret. So, yeah.
Which is amazing because he's obviously easier than the joke, wasn't it?
He was in on the joke.
That's true. That's twice he's replied to us now, so fingers crossed.
Yeah. The first one was to say yes to an interview he never did.
He literally just said yes.
He said, let's figure out.
Let's figure out.
Yeah. Gok Wan didn't reply, but I wasn't really expecting him
Rude. I'm sorry. All those fashion tips.
The Pope, they're busy doing, I won't even say. And
He's busy pontificating.
Pontificating, yeah, he does a lot of that.
I'm sure that's not correct.
It's almost like he's, pontiff.
He's busy being holy.
I was hoping NASA would reply, though. They must watch Wimbledon.
Surely.
Someone there must have been watching Wimbledon when Becca was at his peak. And the only picture I could find of him on a seat, he was surrounded by loads of others, and it almost seemed like strength in numbers. But if we're not knowledgeable on that, what are we knowledgeable on, Becca?
Well, I've had to hastily cobble together some extra fun facts because you stole the first ones. No, you didn't really steal them. Obviously, you'd already mentioned them.
Knowledge just bleeds out of me.
I went to a few different sites. So yeah, fun, not fab, but fun.
Well, fact one has to be that the woman in Allo Allo have just saved the image, and she was cute.
Yeah. She was cuter than the other one.
Yeah. But anyway, carry on.
Mimi.
Yeah, very cute actress for sure.
Was that was that Mariah? I think so. I'm looking at IMDb, yeah.
Maria. Or Mariah.
Francesca Gonshaw's name, yeah.
Mariah
Carey. She was like really...
Early role for Mariah Carey.
Yeah.
Little did you know. That's a fun fact.
She would have bankrupted the show with her demands. I went to 11 dressing rooms and all the walls.
Only 11?
Anyway, so fact number one, Becca.
Fun fact number one. I'm not sure how true this is, so it might not be a fact, but it might be fun. Until the likes of Bourne Ultimatum and Mad Max Fury Road, this is the only sequel to win an Oscar, winning 4 out of the 6 nominations, where the original received no nominations. But I can't actually remember, unfortunately.
I think
it's fun.
It would be wildly unlikely, where sequels have done well at the Academy Awards. Think Godfather 2 or something. The first won some.
Yeah.
And you would expect it at least nominations, particularly even in technical things. So if it had none, and this got nominated, I would.
The Terminator was, such a tiny kind of film in comparison. So
it wouldn't have been campaigning for Oscars. It wouldn't have had the money.
No.
When did this come out? First Terminator film, was it around awards season? Was it eligible?
Oh,
the time of year in which it was released.
Well, they're all eligible. It's just what year are you eligible in? But it's just the fact that to win Oscars now, there is a degree of merit to it in that they're what they try to nominate and all the rest of it. Although we know there are types of films that don't get nominated that arguably should. But at the same time, there is an element of you need to campaign for it.
Yeah.
You need to campaign. You need to be saying we'd like to be considered. And here's some Sun bingo cards, something like that.
Bingo.
Or here's a basket of mini muffins, right? That's I can't imagine bribery would get any more serious than that.
But did we say Orion had Amadeus in the same year though? So they would have been campaigning for that.
Yes.
Because that won a load of Oscars anyway, didn't it?
Yes, it did. It won 7 or 8. So. Any film that plays, I think it's got to play for 3 weeks or a week. I can't remember what it is, but if it plays for enough time, it's eligible. And the Terminator would have been eligible. It did decent money.
Yeah, we'll say your fact is a fact.
Well, we can't prove it right, but it's almost certainly right.
I think it would be quite good to look up some spurious facts, and then you guys can debunk them or prove them right, as per whatever you decide.
Well, we just say that's bollocks and move on.
Well, I just looked on Wikipedia, and Terminator had nothing about any award things at all.
No, I couldn't see.
Yeah, so we'll stamp it as our seal of approval.
Whereas if he'd watched their Lower Low, it might have got into like MTV's Best Kiss or something like that. He just refuses to learn.
Yeah, I don't know when MTV started doing their
Video Music Awards. Not Video
Best
Music
Kiss
Awards,
Award.
Film Awards. I think it was not till the 90s, actually. Video Music.
Yeah, I reckon sort of 90s, 2000s.
Yeah.
there you go. It's Terminator 2 won. Let me just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Ah, 5. See, my fact was wrong.
MTV, 6 MTV Movie Awards.
How about
Best
that?
action sequence, best breakthrough performance, best female performance,
Very-
most desirable female, best male performance, best movie, best song, and best villain.
Wow.
Best breakthrough performance?
Yeah, by Edward Furlong.
Oh no.
But Edward Snowden.
Can he re-break back through the other side, please, and just
It won a,
plaster up the
He's
wall?
okay.
It won a
just
Hugo.
upbringing. He tried hard.
It won a Hugo.
yeah,
That's pretty prestigious.
yeah.
Apparently,
I thought you were trying to say he won for Hugo, or something. He didn't play Hugo. That was years later.
apparently, according to IMDb, Charlie Cosimo, the child actor in Hook, was offered the role but couldn't accept because he was in What About Bob? So
he's already contractually obliged
yeah,
elsewhere.
Okay, there's not much Spielberg I haven't seen, but I've not seen Hook all the way through. So I can't remember. Well, it's shit, apparently. I was going to say, everyone's...
Yes, it's not amazing,
Charlie
but it's
Cooper.
good fun though.
I
It
have a
doesn't
soft
it
spot
really
for
does ham it up.
Yeah. He looks less irritating than Edward Furlong, but then that's not difficult.
but
It is a bit annoying, but
I actually do really like What About Bob. It's actually great. Quite
yeah, it's a
funny.
good film.
Have I seen it? I don't know.
Has Dave seen whataboutbob.com?
It's possible I haven't, you know.
It's a shame Jake Lloyd gets so much and Edward Furlong gets nothing.
Yeah,
terms
it's
of
a bit.
abuse.
It's not fair, really.
Yeah, the trouble is the character's not good, not likable in conception anyway. But I watched The Phantom Menace again last week. Jake Lloyd's about as good as a 9-year-old's ever going to be, really, unless you are, the Haley Joel Osments of this world. There are the odd supernaturally talented one out there, but they're rare.
You always kind of get that problem with, especially with child actors as well. It's such a lot. It's quite a sort of a big role at a very young age, at quite a tender age as well. I think it's always going to be difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, are we still on that?
You shouldn't have gone for a kid that
Still
young,
on fun
though.
fact number 1.
We're still on fun fact 1, aren't we?
Yeah.
Right. What's fun fact 2?
All right. Yeah. Fun fact number 2, as you mentioned earlier in the show, about how much Arnie earned per word. I've got varying figures, so these may not be correct. Arnie apparently took a $15 million salary for this film, with only 700 odd words of dialogue, so 21,429 a word, which is roughly 15 million. So I kind of got figures within 20, sort of 25, depending on which website you look at.
So it's what's the budget?
What's the word number?
700, but I don't think that's right.
Right. No, I think that is right. I heard it's about 60 words in the first film, and it's about 10 times that in this.
Yes, it's only roughly.
So it's 600 to 700, basically.
Yeah, so about 21,000 a word.
Yeah.
Many of those being "I'll be back" and "Hasta la vista, baby." Anyway.
I wonder if he got a cut of the merchandising, because they did a whole toy line.
They did. I would be surprised if he did.
Because they had this thing where it was like this big machine, and what you put in a Terminator like endoskeleton in there, and then you pour this kind of slime stuff in, and what it did is it made a skin around the Terminator.
Ooh,
Okay.
that sounds like a great kind of
That was quite cool.
cool 90s toy.
Yeah.
All gooey and yeah. Fun fact number 3. For their special effects work to bring T-1000 to life, the ILM team expanded from 6 people to 36 people and cost $5.5 million with an extra 7 or 8, again, depending where you look, months of work. I think that's really interesting. Good old ILM.
ILM's work was terrific.
Yeah, fabulous. Fun fact number 4, according to Box Office Mojo, is one of my favourite websites ever.
I find it useful for box office stuff.
Box Office Mojo.
Yeah.
But no, it's really interesting. I think it's very interesting. 14th highest grossing movie of twice obviously Sony, over $204 million. But if you do a list of, obviously you're going to get sort of like Marvel things like that as well.
That's domestic gross as well.
But it's really interesting.
That's domestic gross.
Yeah, just obviously not across global box office, but yeah, just US domestic gross for sure. But I think it's interesting if you sort of compare like US to UK, Europe, and worldwide as well. There's some very interesting lists. I like lists generally. This is quite a long fact, you have to excuse me. So, the opening war scene shot at demolished steel plant in Fontana on the outskirts of San Bernardino, east of LA. Twisted bikes, burned out cars, and blackened cinders are debris from the Universal Studio fire, unfortunately, of 1989/1990. The story goes that a disgruntled security guard thought, screw this. Took out a cigarette and just torched the backlot. A massive fire just started deliberately on the backlot, destroyed a fifth of the standing sets. Total damage was estimated at up to $50 million, and was started in the Brownstone Street alley by a security guard with a cigarette lighter. The flames were fueled by gale force winds and took hours to get under control. Described as one of the largest fires in LA history, and took 400 firefighters from 86 companies in the LA and Burbank areas, along with 6 helicopters to get it under control. And the streets that were damaged included, a long list here, New York Street, as seen in Dick Tracy, which was utterly destroyed, unfortunately. The Ben-Hur set was gutted and destroyed, and also the iconic courthouse squares as seen in Back to the Future. Well, apart from the majority of the courthouse itself, this is actually rebuilt, to kind of different varying designs, got like Frankenstein set, and only the actual courthouse itself remains as original. Obviously, there was a famous fire, sadly, a few years ago, that was kind of completely rebuilt from existing photos and film footage. So yeah, it's not a very fun fact, but there have been quite a lot of fires at Universal, and that was certainly one of the worst ones, unfortunately. So that's my 5 not so fun, not so factual facts.
You've got any favourite fires? Write to us.
My favourite, but like that film was famous or infamous. Infamous goes down in history as being one of the worst, very unfortunate fires at Universal there. Again, it's one of my if ever I go on holiday to America, I always go to Universal. So I must go to Universal. It's fantastic and really interesting.
We're stunned. That was great.
I've managed to have I don't know if it's a fun fact, but I've got a 6 degrees of separation between Terminator 2 and Allo Allo.
Oh, right, yeah, go on, let's hear it.
Where K plays the I can do it in one. Gordon K plays the T-1000. No, go
on. Yeah, basic. Go on.
Right, so there was a guy called and let me just go back to the page shows up. Right, he's called David Jansen, and he played the second air flick.
Yeah, there were 2 of them. That's
in
right.
Allo Allo.
Yes.
And he was also in Z-Cars in a long time ago. So that was and who was in that with Brian Blessed. Brian Blessed was in Much Ado About Nothing with Keanu Reeves, who was in Speed with Joe Morton.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Round of applause. That's amazing. How about that? And
also, this was one of the last films by Kuroko.
Yeah.
Who were basically famous for just spending a ridiculous amount of money on stars and films, and they spent all their budget. Yeah, they did Basic Instinct after this, and then they did Cutthroat Island, which killed them, basically.
I don't think I ever saw that. I heard it was a bit of a turkey.
That's the point. No one did.
Yeah.
No. The problem with the Cutthroat Island, funnily enough, you're talking about wasting money on stars. I mean, firstly, it was made by Rennie Harlin, who's not the greatest filmmaker in the world anyway, but also Gina Davis can't open a fucking film. I mean, she's not the demographic to put in that role.
Yeah, because apparently
she's not the right person.
Apparently, originally it was starring Michael Douglas, but then he dropped out.
What, when he realised he looked absolutely nothing like Gina Davis and would have been a rubbish woman.
When he realised it wasn't Gina Davis.
So they replaced it with Matthew Modine.
Oh, right. Well, there's another guy with very little actual. I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying they're not two people.
The star power is nothing. Yeah.
You don't open $100 million film with that unless you've got an incredible concept. And a pirate film, in and of itself, at that time wouldn't have been it.
No.
So, fairly infamous flop around the same time as Waterworld. It was around the same time as Waterworld.
Yeah.
Flopped really badly as well. But yeah, I guess never get bet against James Cameron. I guess because the number of times people have thought that's not going to work, and it has in his career.
Yeah.
You know, no one thought Titanic would do that money, and certainly no one thought Avatar would do that money.
No.
And Avatar still blows my mind as a financial exercise now.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
It's just been overtaken 10 years later.
That is utterly crazy.
With significantly higher ticket prices and significantly fewer 3D. Would have been less 3D actually as well. But yeah, it's just mind blowing.
But
so was Titanic.
Mind blowing.
I mean, the Phantom Menace on first release did, I don't know, about 930 million on first release, something like that. It's more than that now because of re-releases. You think Titanic came in, was a year or two before, fucking doubled it, and that was like all the pent up demand for a Star Wars film before there'd ever been a bad Star Wars film.
It's immense.
So, and it just took years to be beaten, and when it was beaten by Cameron himself.
He smashed his own record.
Yeah, and so when people say the Avatar sequels won't do that well, they may not do that well, but they'll do well. Because it's James Cameron. They do. He just taps into something in people.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens, because I mean, I don't really like Avatar much. I didn't really think that much of it.
Well, nor did I, but it's
grown
on me over the years. It has. Because I think you have to know what Cameron's flaws are and accept them. And I think with Avatar, all the things that are wrong with it, I go, yeah, well, that's kind of James Cameron. That's kind of what he is. You take the rough with the smooth. Sorry, you were saying you don't like it much, but... And I interrupted, didn't mean to.
But despite that, it's made all this ridiculous amount of money. And no, I find it interesting that, given how much that film made and what its potential sequels will as well. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction to the sequels are versus that film. Especially with the push of 3D.
Well, that's the thing. They'll arrive. There'll be a sort of fresh spell of 3D, if you like. Most people will see it in 3D because that's the way it's just been designed, and it will be heavily marketed that way. But it'll turn up in a higher frame rate. He'll have done something quite innovative with underwater photography and things like that. And he'll broaden out the world, and there'll be enough hooks in it that people will go. It's not going to be the Avatar we saw all those years ago. Let's cook up a new adventure. He will broaden the world, or he'll take it onto like other planets or moons or whatever, and he'll introduce new characters. And let's say, I know he's going to shoot it at a higher frame rate, so we'll just see. But then Gemini Man came out a couple of weeks ago at a higher frame rate, and I didn't see it in its higher frame rate. But the problem is, higher frame rates show up all the flaws and the problems.
Yeah, I've never seen The Hobbit.
Yeah, I saw that in a higher frame rate, and the thing is, you realise how much of resolution is little micro blurs of movement and stuff like that. Because in the higher frame rate, I could see Ian McKellen's contact lens. When he looks through the keyhole,
the makeup,
I could see his contact lens and stuff like that. It looked like BBC TV. It looked awful, actually. But I saw the second one in higher frame rate, and it was better. They'd learnt. The film wasn't better, but they'd learnt to deal with the format more efficiently. If anyone's going to nail it, it'll be James Cameron, because he'll figure it out, because he always does. Plus, it's a largely CG world anyway, but. That Will Smith in Gemini Man, the digital double of his, would look terrible in a high frame rate because it looks shit at a normal frame rate. But there you go. Social media, you can find me at ThePersonKid1976 on Twitter.
You can find me at Cinematronics on Twitter, where you can find all the shows at cinematronics.co.uk. We're available on everywhere pretty much, aren't we? Stitcher, well, no one uses Stitcher. Spotify, Apple, Google, all the rest of it. You'll find us.
We are now everywhere. Charlie, where can we find you?
You can find me at Wassy on Twitter. No. You can find
Pardon?
That's Jonathan Ross.
Yeah.
So all this time, it was
He's
Charlie.
actually Jonathan. Oh my gosh.
He was following me and then has somehow decided that I'm no longer worth following. So
Oh,
I hope he changes his mind.
well, it's his loss.
Yeah, you can find me at Movie Drone on Twitter.
We're all following you, so that's all right.
It'd be fucking rude if we weren't, wouldn't it?
And yes, you can find us on Twitter at Do You Expect Us to Talk. You can find us on Facebook, Do You Expect Us to Talk? You can also find us under the same name on YouTube and iTunes. Type in Do You Expect Us to Talk? And don't forget to give us a 5-star review. Nice words, please. Helps us to rank a lot higher. Not that we ever rank higher. And attract more listeners. And you can also email us at expectustalk@gmail.com.
And thank you to Brent Attica for the 5-star review you gave us a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. That was very kind.
Yeah.
I might like to just throw something out there, a bit of a curveball as well, to the lovely listeners out there. If you would like to, send us an email. Your thoughts, views on the Terminator movies. What's your favourite one? What's your worst one? What bits you like? What bits you don't like? Let us know, and we can read it out on the show.
And if you
Trying to get a bit of interaction, but it's not going to happen. Or just tweet us.
And do you think Vicky Michelle was fitter than the one he was cocking off with at the start of Allo Allo? And also, when like Where's the Gummidge fell off his fucking post at the end of the show, do you prefer when he fell forwards or backwards? I think occasionally he fell sideways as well. Let us know.
Tweet us, #right, #left.
Yeah. Join us next week when we'll be discussing
We'll create a poll. Let us know.
GT3 with Keith Barron.
This is turning
It's
into
probably
the
more
episode
entertaining than Terminator 3.
Yeah. This is the Nicholas Briggs television review show, Nick and Benji show that he does with Benji Clifford, and literally they trawl through decades of cult telly. It's turning into a bit like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember this classic show? No, do you remember this classic show?
The thing is, half the time when we do it, we don't do it deliberately. Just suddenly think, hang on, I'm talking about Where's the Gummidge here, what's going on?
A classic show from the 70s or something like that.
Yeah.
Who's Nicholas Briggs? I remember Johnny Briggs.
Oh yeah, I remember Johnny Briggs too.
Mm.
I think he does a lot of work for like the Big Finish audio shows, but he's sort of like writer, producer, director. You might know him as maybe the voice of the Daleks in the recent Doctor Who series. He's done lots of voiceover work, things like that.
Okay.
I'd officially put out the Space 1999 new audio version of Breakaway, which I think he wrote. Let's have a look.
I'm not convinced.
No. But yeah, I think he's better known as voice of the Daleks.
Okay.
So we've moaned about this film a little bit, but it's all downhill from here. Which
It
means...
really is. You know what? I think this is kind of marks my drop-off point. I think I saw this upcoming film, and then I thought, oh, no more.
Yeah.
And that kind of marks my drop-off point with the Terminator series.
So anyway, what does that mean, Becca?
So that means, fortunately and unfortunately, yeah, Do Expect to Talk will return with Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. Dun dun dun.
Happy days are yours and mine.